Chapter 181. Old Demon Duan deceives me. The tea house owner didn't expect old Gua to have met with such misfortune, and couldn't help but feel some heartache. Yes, old Gua had not returned for half a day yesterday, causing the tea customers to complain loudly. Logically, he should be very angry, but seeing old Gua later, he curiously did not have the heart to be angry. At the time, he felt it was strange, as he was always hot-tempered. But now, after thinking it over, he realized that though it was still old Gua, he now seemed more and more pleasing to the eye. It even made him a bit itchy-hearted. "Old Gua, I'll have someone escort you at night from now on," the tea house owner said. "Thank you, shopkeeper. Just let me rest for one day. I promise I'll continue storytelling tomorrow," old Gua said firmly. Despite such a tragedy, old Gua was not disheartened, but became even more committed to his career. These setbacks, the persecution by the followers of old Demon Duan, were just tests from the heavens for his bloodthirsty storytelling career. He could definitely make it. Duan Yun knew nothing about what happened to old Gua afterward because he was very busy and very tired. Being bullied and murdered was not a rare occurrence in this world, but rather a common one. Before the world was filled with heroic spirit, this world was inherently rotten. The reason why Duan Yun was tired was that his medical skills had been recognized by his peers. It had been over 2 hours since Murong brothers had been treated. He was so exhausted that he broke into sweat, but they were still not satisfied. Complaints like "this scar must be removed, this shape is too ugly, that scar can be left slightly to enhance masculinity. Is this the plight of a plastic surgeon?" But after much persuasion, most of the scars on the Murong brothers were removed, and he also used electric power to whiten their faces by a lot. The more he spun the tiny electric power of Thunder True Chi, the more he discovered its wonders. In fact, many things in this world are interconnected. It actually shares similarities with the demon electricity produced by the 12 layers of spring rain, except that demon electricity is harder to control. If his body could withstand it, he might accidentally turn his entire body into ominous red hair. This tiny thunder electricity can penetrate deep into the flesh. Electricity can not only remove impurities but also stimulate vitality in the flesh, which is why it can also remove spots and enhance beauty. Unexpectedly, through practicing medicine, he slowly entered a delicate realm. After much persuasion, the Murong brothers' demands were met. However, they had too many scars and demands, which took a huge toll, so Duan Yun only whitened their necks and faces before letting them out. After all, it wasn't noticeable once clothed. After the Murong brothers came out, they looked into the water and were completely stunned. "How handsome! Why am I so handsome? Old Demon Duan truly has a magic touch." For a time, the Murong brothers were ecstatic, nearly wanting to kiss Duan Yun a few times. In fact, Duan Yun was also very satisfied with the effect of the treatment, restoring at least 50 to 60% of Murong brothers' Dehua elegance, looking significantly younger. Or rather, he was young. It's just these past few scruffy years and self-neglect that aged him too much. He found the Murong brothers much more pleasing to the eye now. At that moment, though, the Murong brothers immediately went on to show off their beauty to Feng Linger and Shining. However, Feng Linger and Shining looked disgusted. Feng Linger said, "Can you not sway in front of me? Just a bit whiter, are you as white as me? Duan Yun was exhausted by you, and I'm the one to settle accounts with you." Shining also looked speechless and said, "Can you sit down? You're making my eyes dizzy." The Murong brothers felt quite depressed at that moment. They became handsome like this, but these two women didn't change much in their reactions. Right? It must be because they are acquaintances. Acquaintances always have a fixed impression, and it is hard for them to notice such an earth-shaking change. Hence, the Murong brothers, usually too lazy to be exceptional, prepared to go out for a stroll. Although they did not elicit any change from Feng Linger and Shining, one look in the mirror, and they felt incredibly confident. Arriving at the bustling Yusher town, the Murong brothers joyfully discovered that indeed, they were more appealing than before. "Indeed, I am too handsome. It can be said that I just have a good foundation, and old Demon Duan made me so charming with just a slight touch." The Morong brothers enjoyed the feeling, usually weary from walking a few steps. But now they decided to stroll around the town. The lost confidence at Yuju Villa, they wanted to fully reclaim it. An hour later, Morong got back to Yuju Villa. The confidence and joy he had when he first arrived in town had vanished, replaced by confusion and a hint of panic. Seeing him look so out of sorts, Shining couldn't help but ask, "What happened to you?" Morong stared blankly and said, "It's so bizarre. I was just walking around the town, and 3 different groups of people tried to make a move on me." Shining exclaimed, "Make a move? What do you mean? Did you make enemies again?" Morong quickly explained, "No. These 3 groups tried to rob me of my beauty. Ha ha ha." Hearing this, Shun-ing couldn't help but burst into laughter and said, "Rob your beauty? Rob you? Did you run into another young lady? If it were women, I might understand. But the outrageous part is all 3 groups were men." Shun-ing paused for a moment, then laughed even louder. "Ha ha ha ha. It seems your scar removal and skin whitening was really effective." Then Feng Linger and Duan Yun also rushed to get there for the meal. After hearing about Morong's ordeal, Feng Linger sincerely said, "Brother, when I used to dislike you, I cursed you to be troubled by men, but I didn't really mean it." After saying that, Feng Linger and Shining burst into laughter together. Duan Yun didn't laugh as he is a professional. Seeing this, Morong muttered to himself, no men please." He used to worry about being killed by his half-sister, and now he had to worry about men fancying him. So, he suddenly turned to Duan Yun and said, "Can you turn me back? I suddenly realize I don't want to be this handsome." Duan Yun replied, "How is that possible? You think my demon electricity is omnipotent? Besides, handsomeness comes at a price, which is reasonable." Morong retorted, "You're handsome. Why don't you pay a price?" Duan Yun seriously said, "Because I was born this way. Plus, how can you say I don't pay a price? On my first night in the martial world, I met the fairy of Red House and the Shadow Woman." Then, he consoled Morong, "Maybe it's just a coincidence. Yushur Town has attracted so many evil demon outsiders. Maybe those who fancy men are just more common, and you just happen to be more handsome." Morong said, "Really?" Feng Linger suggested, "If you're unsure, why not spend a night on the streets of Yushur Town tonight? If no man actually comes to sleep with you, you'll know." Morong instantly crossed his arms over his chest as if facing a great enemy, and said, "I'm not going." At that time, Duan Yun was about to go out. Feng Linger couldn't help asking, "Where are you going?" "My medical skills are ready, so naturally, I'm going to rent a shop. Isn't Azure Dragon supposed to appear in a few days? It might turn into another martial calamity. So I'm opening the medical shop early to save more people. Oh yes, I also need to dig the cellar of the shop soon," Duan Yun said busily. Shining couldn't help but say, "What if the Azure Dragon's matter turns out to be false? If no one gets hurt in a bloody fight, won't you have been busy for nothing?" "How could it be for nothing? There are so many hidden demons among these martial folks. Even if the Azure Dragon's matter is false, we'll have to stir things up together to fight the demons. Injuries and accidents are inevitable in demon extermination, and I can just use my medical skills." Saying this, he rushed out quickly. Afterwards, the 3 people at the villa looked at each other, all feeling a bit odd. Why do I feel like he's going to make a bloody mess just to use his medical skills? Morong wondered aloud.
Feng Linger countered, "Bloodshed is inevitable in righteous acts."
This female hero will join forces with young hero Duan to fight demons. Saying that, she too left the villa to follow Duan Yun. Morong gasped, saying, "It's over. I feel like my sister got bewitched by old demon Duan's Dao heart. What a perfectly good girl, becoming a female hero." Shining said disdainfully, "Yeah, at this rate, she may go crazy any day now. Can't you have your dad come and take her back for some proper discipline?" Morong looked pained and said, "My dad wronged her. He can't manage her." Shining became even more disdainful and said, "Useless." With that, she left with a look of disdain. Morong couldn't help but retort, Could you not be so blunt? Thinking of those men who had leered at him, Murong shivered. Does he have to fight off these admirers all his life? Old demon, you've wronged me. Chapter 182. Chaos in the small town. The old demon's edge pressures all. Duan Yun finally found the shop space he needed. Nowadays, with so many people flooding into Yusher town, everyone renting out spaces treats them like treasures. Saying every inch of land is worth its weight in gold wouldn't be an exaggeration. If not for the Mo sect taking control and regulating the area due to its newfound popularity, I'm afraid many local residents' homes would have been turned into shops. Even though Duan Yun had previously collected quite a bit of rent from Feng Linger's mother, renting this shop still caused him quite a bit of heartache. For no other reason than it being expensive. However, he only planned to rent it short-term for 2 months, as he speculated that after this Azure Dragon turmoil subsided, this place would sooner or later return to its usual busy state. Even with his old demon Duan's enduring popularity, it couldn't possibly stay pricier than the hottest street shops in small spring town by 2 or 3 times. Right? That would be totally unreasonable. Back when he first came to town, it was desolate, but now it seems to be out of reach. The shop Duan Yun rented was located at the end of a street on the west side of town, marked by a large parasol tree at the door. Although the location wasn't exactly prime, given the current foot traffic in Yusher town, it was far from being secluded. Securing a short rental of a place like this at such a time was indeed fortunate. Key to his choice was the cellar. There was an existing cellar in the backyard of the shop that could be easily expanded for use. Had the landlord not been so greedy, always charging a premium, this shop would not still be available. After a whole day of buzzing about with hardly any sleep, Duan Yun somehow managed to open the medical hall. Compassionate Heart Medical Hall. The Murong brothers came to observe Duan Yun's medical hall. Honestly, seeing a martial brother they spent all their time with, who was also known as a demon, suddenly start up a medical hall, gave them a quite extraordinary feeling. Dr. Su Xian, specialist in gynecology, external and internal injuries, skilled in beauty treatments, mole removal, scar elimination, and midwifery. Reading a makeshift wooden sign with big characters on it, the Murong brothers felt the urge to mock. Couldn't help but ask, "You can deliver babies?" Duan Yun confidently declared, "Of course, it's a family tradition." With the addition of electric acupuncture to his skills, his techniques had naturally advanced. Feng Linger pondered, "Why call yourself Su Xian?" Shining mocked, "If he wrote Dr. Duan Yun, who would dare to come in?" With that, the three of them visualized the same scenario in their minds. A severely injured person from the martial world finds the medical hall, their face lighting up with ecstatic hope, thinking they are saved, only to suddenly see the sign saying, "Dr. Duan Yun," and immediately turn pale with fear, exclaiming, "Duan? Old demon Duan? Run for it. No way around it." From the start, Duan Yun's reputation has been linked with being a doctor, and folks often say apart from enjoying the disguise of a young hero, he also loves pretending to be a doctor, which he notably resembles, making it easy to deceive people. Mr. Liu from Fenglin Town is that very example, who fell for one of his questionable remedies and turned into a woman. Only Duan Yun and his close friends knew that he actually was a gynecologist by profession. It's just that the misunderstanding of the masses about him ran too deep. This time, Duan Yun taking the alias Su Xian was a sign of his self-awareness. Unable to hold back, the Murong brothers teasingly said to their sister, "You've no idea. He's used quite a few aliases over time, like Murong Fu, Duan Lang, especially the name Murong Fu, which was recognized by people the very same day, ha ha ha." Speaking of this, Duan Yun felt a flare of anger in his heart. Just then, voices from outside could be heard. "Huh, there's a new medical hall here. Come on. What are you looking at a medical hall for? The brothel of the fairy from the Chongling sect is already up." "What? The fairy from the Chongling sect who was forced into prostitution by old demon Duan?" "Exactly. Otherwise, how could there be such good fortune? That old demon Duan is really inhuman. I heard the 3 fairy swordswomen of the Chongling sect were pure as driven snow, but ended up being corrupted by him." falling into debauchery and catering to guests. The fairy suffered. I ought to go and offer my solace. Well then, brothers, let's hurry to get in line. We might miss out. Really? Quickly. Hearing this, the usually lazy Murong brothers were the first to run out, showing unexpectedly eager initiative. Xining and Fenglinger both revealed contemptuous expressions. Xining couldn't help but mock. He's never that enthusiastic about eating. The brothers' image in the eyes of the two women plummeted once again. Indeed, it seemed like their reputations were already rock bottom, and yet they found room to sink further. Especially for Fenglinger, recollecting she once had a fondness for him. Considering he was also her half-brother from the same father, she felt a chill. What kind of shoddy relatives are these, losing face right in front of little Duan Yun? At that moment, Xining and Fenglinger started to sort out the herbs for Duan Yun. Watching the two women busy themselves, Duan Yun suddenly felt a warm sensation. It was because they both had the aura of a capable wife. He couldn't help but recall that ridiculous dream he had. The one where he ended up marrying for women. That dream must be related to the Dharma image he had refined, but ultimately, it was also a reflection of his inner self. Scientifically speaking, he wouldn't have had such a dream if his subconscious hadn't considered it. And then Duan Yun suddenly realized an utterly preposterous fact. Damn, why do all four feel like brothel girls? Why are there so many beautiful women in the underworld? Duan Yun quickly dismissed these ludicrous thoughts and continued sorting the herbs. Most of these herbs, newly purchased from Wangchun City, were for internal medicinal tonics. Should the Azure Dragon appear here, causing major turmoil, the focus would be on external injuries, and he hardly ever used medicines to treat such injuries. The herbs were there partly to make the place seem more like a real medical hall. Just like how a brothel often smells powerfully of rouge. Smelling rouge, you think of finding a lady for entertainment, but smelling medicinal herbs, and seeing such a reliable and patient doctor, patients' moods are likely to lift as well. Chapter 183. Before long, Murong came back. Duan Yun couldn't help but ask, "You're done already?" Murong replied with heartfelt distress. "What done? It was so packed I couldn't even squeeze in. The people from the martial world in the town are not pretending anymore. They've all drawn their weapons." At this moment, Murong showed a look of deep sorrow and said, "When I was a child, the beautiful sisters and aunts from the Chongling sect would visit my father and bring me candy. I liked them so much. I just wanted to see if there was anyone I knew, to understand their plight, and see if I could uphold justice and lend a hand. But who would have thought there would be so many people? I remember the Chongling sect was short on silver before. Now that their cultivation technique has improved, they're not short on silver anymore," Murong analyzed. Duan Yun couldn't resist making a sarcastic comment. "So it seems only the world where I get hurt has come true, huh?" Seeing Duan Yun's unhappy expression, Murong quickly said, "You're not thinking of getting revenge on them, are you?" "No, don't. They had no choice. The martial world is too cruel. If they don't practice their skills, they will be killed or have their sect exterminated. They just wanted to use your pretext to preserve some dignity. After all, the Chongling sect has a long history. As a young hero, this is also a meritorious thing for you." Duan Yun was momentarily at a loss for words. Or rather, at a loss for words about this martial world. He spread his hands and said, "Why are you getting so worked up? Did I say I was going to do anything? Yes, compared to the many other big problems, this one was hardly worth mentioning." Suddenly, Duan Yun started to speculate, "You're so concerned about the Chongling sect's female sword immortals? Looks like you've inherited Uncle Murong's romantic nature. By the way, you wouldn't have a sister in the Chongling sword sect, would you?" Murong immediately tensed up, turning pale and said, "No way. The Chongling sect hadn't done anything at that time before my mother caught them." Duan Yun spoke earnestly. "With Uncle Murong's abilities, is there anyone he couldn't steal?" Shun Ying analyzed. "I heard that only 3 female sword immortals from the Chongling sect came out to receive guests. From what you said earlier, something about that Jade Girl Heart Sutra seems off. Only when it's practiced to a high level does it become impossible to suppress desires. Duan Yun said seriously. If your half-sister doesn't have exceptional talent, she probably wouldn't have come out to do this job. At this point, he couldn't help lowering his voice and said, Brother, you don't want to see your sister coming out to welcome guests, do you? Morong almost instinctively said, No, definitely not. Then, in a panic, he said, But I know that once you start practicing the Jade Girl Heart Sutra, it becomes addictive and there's no turning back. Suddenly, sparks of electricity danced at Duan Yun's fingertips. The flickering arcs illuminated his face with an intermittent glow. There's no turning back? That's because they haven't been to Dr. Su Xian for a thorough cure. In Dr. Su's hands, even the most severe addiction can't last long. Saying this, the electric arc at his fingertips surged, forming a swirling, branch-like shape. Those standing close by had their hair start to float. Murong hurriedly said, I get it. Put away your divine skills now. This was originally a joke made by Duan Yun, but the more Murong thought about it, the more he saw it as a possibility. Feng Linger also felt similar, for as the illegitimate daughter, she knew exactly what old man Murong was like. This is something you and the old man must settle. If this person really exists, she's probably our sister, Feng Linger said in frustration. This time, Duan Yun said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Murong, you don't want your sister out there welcoming guests. A sentence that truly struck a chord. Murong asked, What should I do then? Xin Ying suggested, You should swing by the Chongling sword sect more often. With your looks, even if there's a blind woman who likes you, she's probably your half-sister. Feng Linger, who had once been blind, nodded and said, Sounds plausible. So how often should I go? The thought of his sister possibly being in a dire situation made Murong, who hailed his sister as the most precious in the world, restless. Xin Ying suggested, The Chongling sword sect doesn't accept male disciples, but with your current qualities, changing your appearance a bit to become a servant would be more than enough. I, the handsomest man of the Murong family for 3 generations. A servant? Murong questioned. Then, seeing that Duan Yun and the others wanted to hit him, he quickly backed down and said, So which kind of servant do you think I should be? A manure hauler. A cook. A gatekeeper. 3 people, 3 answers. Women also defecate, and they dislike hauling manure even more. If you disguise yourself as a manure hauler, you can quickly integrate. While helping the female disciples of the Chongling sect with manure, if your sister is among them, she should quickly take an interest in you as the manure hauler. Even if she likes a manure hauler, then, even if your father doesn't acknowledge it, she's definitely your sister, Xin Ying explained. Feng Linger argued logically, Women need to eat too. At this moment, Murong said, I can haul manure, but I probably can't cook. Feng Linger gasped. You say with such nerve that you can't cook. What a waste. Then Murong turned to Duan Yun and said, I want to hear the gatekeeper perspective. Duan Yun said, A gatekeeper has free time to lie down, and what's more, he can see the female disciples coming and going every day. With your qualities, if a woman is blind enough to fancy you as a gatekeeper, she's definitely your sister. Murong immediately perked up and said, I'll be a gatekeeper. That's right. It's not easy to become a disciple of the Chongling sect, but as long as you're willing to spend some silver and pull some strings, becoming a gatekeeper should be no problem at all. Chapter 184. When is the best time for me to go? Just thinking about his sister in deep trouble, Murong couldn't sit still. Xin Ying analyzed. I think it would be best to wait until after the matter of the Azure Dragon. The Chongling sect has also arrived, so there's a chance your sister might be among them. If luck is on our side, perhaps you'll encounter her. Once you find her, bring her here immediately, so I can give our younger sister a thorough cure, Dr. Su Xian said earnestly. Duan Yun's medical clinic finally opened after much persuasion, and it was definitely an occasion worth celebrating. Though the backyard of the pharmacy was small, limiting Big White's ability to practice his punches, that didn't stop the 4 people from Yuzhu Villa from eating and drinking in celebration. People always need to eat. and the four always found a reason to eat well. Today's meal naturally included Old Chen's roasted meats and duck. Since Yusher Town became bustling, Old Chen's back bent from fatigue, but his smile bloomed ever more brightly. No one would complain about having too much money, because at the end of the street, the Renshin Medical Hall was relatively quiet. One could still hear voices of Jianghu people discussing big and small matters. Cheers to Mr. Duan. No, cheers to Dr. Su Xian for a grand opening. May your fame last forever. Murong was the first to raise his glass, congratulating Duan Yun. Wishing you display your skills fully and earn a good reputation. Shen Ying added her blessing. And I wish for Dr. Su Xian, medical practitioner's compassionate heart, to become a divine doctor whose treatments make people beautiful. Feng Linger gave her blessing. Shen Ying frowned. Could you not speak so strangely when you talk to him? Feng Linger looked aggrieved. Sister Ying, what's strange about the way I talk? Her way of speaking to Duan Yun was a bit coquettish, and now with a face full of grievances, it made Shen Ying clench her fists. Just then, someone exclaimed, "What is that? A Dharma image?" In an instant, the four people from Duan Yun soared to the rooftop. By that time, many people were already standing on the rooftops of Yusher Town. In the center of the town, a dark, shiny Vajra Dharma image stood, shining under the moonlight. This Buddha Dharma image had 3 faces and 3 eyes on each. It was ambiguous between male and female, and in the moonlight, it appeared both majestic and eerie. It's the sorcerer monk from Dusk Temple. Moments later, a misty mountain phantom slowly rose, dotted with numerous long swords. Even though it was just a phantom of a Dharma image, those swords emitted a chill to the bone. It's from the Huangshan sword sect. Following that, a red silk phantom floated up from a newly constructed wooden building, spinning continuously. Within that rotating red silk, a female figure appeared faintly visible. It's the female sword immortal from Chongling sect. Murong's eyes were fervent. Suddenly, halfway up the mountain, a red pagoda appeared. Duan Yun recognized the place. It was an abandoned villa not far from their Yuzhu villa. The people from Red Tower Mountain have also arrived. Red Tower ancestor once single-handedly suppressed the Guangyuan sect and has been out of sight for a long time. I wonder if he has come this time? Soon, someone on the rooftop started educating everyone. People of Jianghu love to show off their knowledge. Red Tower Mountain? Looking at the red pagoda Dharma image halfway up the mountain, Duan Yun felt the name sounded familiar but couldn't remember where he had heard it. Then, more Dharma images began to appear one after another. Each appearance of a Dharma image stirred excitement and sparked discussions. Duan Yun finally realized this was the local powers flexing their muscles. It meant if the Azure Dragon truly appeared, they had already arrived here, and those who wanted a piece of the action should check if they had the strength to compete. According to Duan Yun's later understanding, it is usually after the Tongyu realm that martial artists can gradually condense a Dharma image. His situation of condensing a Dharma image after a short period of cultivation was very rare. This was naturally because Jade's sword true understanding was indeed miraculous, combined with him being a 1 in 10,000 cultivation prodigy. Watching the Dharma images appearing in the town of various sizes, Duan Yun felt it was like a myriad demons dancing, and more people gathered on the rooftops. Many roofs even collapsed under the weight. Screams echoed continuously. Each emergence of a Dharma image caused a flurry of discussions, like the Jianghu people on the previous rooftops continuously educating on which sect had deep roots and which figures were incredibly powerful. Of course, this wasn't all, as many masters prefer to stay hidden and disdain showing off at such times. As over 10 Dharma images appeared, representing over 10 forces competing for the Azure Dragon. Towards the end, the onlookers started to find the viewing of Dharma images a bit tiring. Suddenly, a burst of sensational noise erupted from the crowd. On the hillside outside the town, suddenly over a dozen Dharma images appeared simultaneously. These Dharma images all took the form of a very handsome young man, with arms behind him blooming like lotuses, some looking like ethereal sword immortals, some sinister like villains, some dressed tightly, some bare-chested showing off their 8-pack abs. This also indicated that this force had over a dozen people who had managed to train out their Dharma images. Looking at these Dharma images, Duan Yun felt as if he was seeing over a dozen versions of himself. Morong, Shining felt a chill, while flower fanatic Fenglinger showed a obsessed woman-like expression. That's old demon Duan's Dharma image. Jade Sword Sect has also arrived. The Dharma image of Jade Sword Sect doesn't follow the usual path. Even those in the Qi realm can manifest it, but it really looks wicked. I wonder if old demon Duan has also come. Old demon Duan usually doesn't appear with the Jade Sword Sect, only heard of once in the U state. If old demon Duan has arrived, then we're in for a good show. Previously, the Dharma images displayed were mostly from renowned and orthodox sects like Huangshan Sword Sect and Red Tower Mountain, overshadowing the others, giving it a bit of a one-sided feel. But as old demon Duan's Jade Sword Sect appeared, the scene suddenly became lively. Exciting! So exciting! The narrator Old Gua, with a red bandage wrapped around his head, rubbed his sore spot and watched the scene unfold with bloodthirsty eyes. Chapter 185. Dr. Su Xian and young hero Duan Lang jointly take on the evil demon with a two-pronged approach. Yusher Town, inside the two-story building on the east side of the town. Sect leader's wife Zhao Ling of the Huangshan Sword Sect wore plain clothes. The design was ordinary, yet it could not hide her impressive body curves. The sect leader's wife appeared to be gentle and frail, resembling the kind of woman who, after losing her husband and donning mourning attire, seemed easy to bully. Many in the martial world harbored similar thoughts. Unfortunately, they all died. Or rather, she herself enjoyed making others think that way, and then killing them. A high-end hunter always appears as prey. Therefore, there is an underground saying in the martial world that the seemingly gentle sect leader's wife of the Huangshan Sword Sect is, in fact, a black spider wearing a guise of tenderness. You see her and want to gain something from her, but most likely you'll end up with nothing and die an unnatural death. After you die, everything you owned, not to mention even your whole family, could be implicated and meet an untimely end because of her. There's always been a saying in the martial world, do not provoke a beauty who dares to show her face. Probably because of people like the sect leader's wife, and it was she who displayed her Dharma image last night. As the second most skilled practitioner within the Huangshan Sword Sect, second only to the sect leader, she is possibly even more dangerous. Those in the know become alert upon seeing Mrs. Zhao Ling's beautiful eyes. Those are not the eyes of gentle vulnerability, but of restraint and inner brilliance, a true master among masters. Her daughter Qining was humiliated by old demon Duan, and the story of pissing on the golden sword has been turned into tales by numerous storytellers. A great humiliation for both the Huangshan Sword Sect and her as a mother, causing her heart to ache deeply. She kills without batting an eye, takes pleasure in torturing others, but when it comes to her daughter being killed and tortured, it's hard to accept. This time her husband couldn't come because he was in seclusion, so she brought about a dozen trustworthy disciples with her. Soon, the favorite disciple of Mrs. Zhao Ling, Su Lingyi, returned. Since Chan Ying married Zhu Haimian, she has treated this well-behaved female disciple as her own daughter, wishing to pass on all her skills to her. Back to your teacher, disciple has checked. There is no trace of old demon Duan within the Jade Sword Sect. It has always been rumored in the martial world that old demon Duan moves mysteriously and prefers to act alone, Su Lingyi reported. Lady Zhao Ling pondered and said, in 3 days, once the Azure Dragon appears, we must seize the dragon essence. Su Lingyi said thoughtfully, but my lady, the dragon essence. Zhao Ling's gaze softened slightly and at the same time became firmer, as she said, if I confront old demon Duan now, the outcome is uncertain, but if we obtain the dragon essence, or even just some dragon meat, it would be enough to change the situation. Old demon Duan made my daughter piss on the golden sword. I want old demon Duan to be drenched. As for the cost of the dragon essence, I do not care. Your master is in seclusion. What I can do is avenge my daughter and ensure the reputation of the Huangshan Sword Sect does not fall. In that moment, The sect leader's wife's eyes shone with righteousness, exuding a noble aura. This suddenly moved the disciples of the Huangshan sword sect to red eyes. The lady was willing to sacrifice herself to fight against the evil demon old demon Duan. This selfless spirit is truly the essence of our Huangshan sword sect. Being a doctor of the Compassionate Heart Medical Hall, the opening of the medical hall should have been a happy occasion. But Duan Yun was not in high spirits. Last night, a bunch of people recklessly released his Dharma image, causing him to be called Old Demon Duan by a frightened woman early this morning, who was then muzzled and dragged away by her companion as if they had seen a ghost. Last night's Dharma image of the Jade Sword sect was displayed like a repeated large-screen advertisement, something that usually isn't a big deal, as it's normally only revealed during battle. However, last night's spectacle was different. Revealing oneself to a dense crowd is regrettable, for it is only his own fault for being too charming and leaving a deep impression on many. Thinking that his new identity, Su Xian, would be connected with old demon Duan, before even receiving any guests, Duan Yun couldn't be in a mood, so he had no choice but to buy a half-face wooden mask to wear. Considering the possibility of the Azure Dragon's appearance in 2 days, he feared inevitable conflicts and bloodshed, making Duan Yun rather nervous. Although he has been a young hero many times and has seen many things, it's his first time facing such a situation as a doctor. It's natural to feel nervous the first time. These past days he's been busy whitening the Murong brothers' skin, removing Feng Linger's moles, and making Shadow Ying's complexion even, neglecting to properly treat even one case of internal or external injury. This left him feeling somewhat rusty. This time he should be focusing on surgery, but he's ended up as a dermatologist. Should he bring old Gua back for some practice? Besides, the cellar has been dug out already. These days, not just Duan Yun, but also Shining, Feng Linger, and the Murong brothers were feeling nervous. Something as significant as the Azure Dragon treasure, aside from the forces revealed yesterday, one could never know how many crafty old foxes are lurking. Even with their formidable martial arts, ensuring their safety is not going to be easy. Yet, only Duan Yun, old demon Duan, still enthusiastically runs a medical hall as a doctor. Shanning analyzed. It's not without reason that outsiders like to see him as an old demon who enjoys his play acting. Indeed, even as the others felt some tension, only Duan Yun immersed himself in the role of a doctor, enjoying it without any sign of fatigue. His tension lay only in whether he could properly perform his medical skills, not in the real and terrifying dangers outside. It's as if he's truly become addicted to his role-playing game, unable to extricate himself. Chapter 186. Duan Yun still decided to go find old Gua to solidify his skills. Watching his departing figure, the Murong brothers couldn't help but say, "He looks perfectly normal, but why does he give off an abnormal vibe?" Feng Linger said disdainfully, "What's abnormal? More handsome than you, better at martial arts than you, even his medical skills are unparalleled. That's abnormal, right? Such petty jealousy." With that, she walked away with a look of disgust. "Aye!" The Murong brothers' faces turned green, and their hearts felt cold. In his heart, his sister was the finest in the world, yet her heart was already occupied by someone else. It is truly said that the passionate bear more sorrows. Endless hatred without a day of relief. Suddenly, the Murong brothers, feeling this wrenching pain, the green chill in their hearts, seemed to gradually take on substance. Almost at the same time, the sword on his waist vibrated as if it resonated with his green mood, emitting a humming sound. He remembered the night when Duan Yun screamed in agony as he mastered the 12 layers of spring rain, and he too became engrossed in it. Without realizing it, he had been influenced by Duan Yun. Or perhaps, everyone in Yuzhu Villa was being influenced by Duan Yun. This guy inherently had the power to influence others. Damn it! Damn it! Spin! Spin! Let this sorrow spin into motion. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Murong brothers grasped the sword hilt, and without unsheathing the sword, a sharp sword chi whirled out. The sword chi lingered, twining like threads, enveloping his entire being. For a moment, he seemed to be inside a cocoon formed by the sword chi. From this angle, all the sword chi was green, casting his barely visible face in a ghastly green light. I've succeeded. I truly am a one-of-a-kind swordsman prodigy. This sword, like the relentless hate in my heart, also shows a jade color. Let's call it Endless Hatred Jade Blade. For a moment, the sword chi around him grew even more vigorous. Influenced by Duan Yun, the Murong brothers had come upon such a sword technique on their own. Shining and Feng Linger noticed something odd, looking at the green-faced Murong brothers with grave expressions. Even from a distance, their emotions seemed affected, evoking a pain similar to seeing the one they loved falling for someone else. This sword chi must be poisonous, Shining murmured to herself. What kind of mindset must one have to develop such a green-tinted and distressing sword technique? Not being cut by this sword chi already causes such heartache. What about if one were actually cut by it? Wouldn't that be truly like being poisoned? With a swish, the lingering green sword light of the Murong brothers retracted back into the scabbard. His eyes still a shade of green, he murmured. I also want others to feel the pain when my love turns into a sister, and yet in her heart, there is someone else. Saying this, he walked outside. Since Duan Yun had whitened him, making him a target for men, the Murong brothers hadn't dared to leave the house these past few days to properly protect themselves. But now, with his self-invented sword technique taking shape, he felt somewhat inflated. Mainly because his sword technique was connected to his emotional state. Without truly venting these green feelings, he believed he could hardly bear it. The Murong brothers once had several unforgettable romances. All turned to agony when the women turned out to be his half-sisters from the same father. Tormented by these agonies, he once contemplated starving himself to death within Yuzhu Villa. With Duan Yun's arrival, he felt the unreasonable talent and vigorous vitality of the other aspiring to be a young hero, and he himself was influenced, gradually coming back to life. He thought that having experienced so much painful love, he could bear anything. But he hadn't anticipated that there was a level of pain even beyond that. And that was this shade of green in his feelings. The Murong brothers walked down the street, even deliberately swinging their buttocks. He was fishing for those perverts who liked men, to let them feel his agony. Duan Yun was also walking in the streets. He initially came to hoodwink old Gua, but considering last night's host of Dharma images, among which were many evil demons, he decided to change targets. Old Gua had probably had enough of his antics. He needed some fresh practice targets. Evil demons were the most suitable trial for him, Dr. Su Xian, to become the divine doctor. But unexpectedly, since last night's disturbance, Yusher town had become much quieter. It seemed last night's show of Dharma images had frightened many scattered Jianghu people, prompting various factions to be on guard, confining themselves within their own territories, daring not to act rashly. Duan Yun made a round but found no particularly easy targets. Damn, these evil demons are so cunning, hiding so well. He decided to wander outside the town once more, and if he couldn't find a suitable target, he would barge into those sects and factions and forcibly take someone. For example, the Chongling sect's swordswoman that the Murong brothers yearned for. Treating both body and mind, perhaps she could be reformed under his treatment. There were rumors outside that the swordswoman of Chongling sect had fallen due to old demon Duan. What if she were healed by him, the divine Dr. Su Xian? Thinking about this, the fingertip thunder of Duan Yun, with his medical practitioner's compassionate heart, was itching to act. No, he even thought about becoming the gatekeeper of the Chongling sect. After all, Dr. Su Xian, with his compassionate heart, loved to rescue others, like persuading the swordswoman to reform. Outside Yusher town, in an unremarkable cave, a beautiful red-dressed woman sat cross-legged. Her skin was a strange earthy yellow, similar in color to the surrounding dirt, making her at first glance resemble a human sculpture in the cave. Beside her, 3 young women had the same color of skin. Chapter 187. At this moment, the woman clad in red spoke up. Where are 4th sister and 7th sister? Big sister. They probably saw a few fishing folks yesterday and went out to have some fun slicing off faces. One of the young women replied. Azure Dragon is about to appear in the world. Why are they still running amok? The woman in red said. Don't worry, big sister. With the skills of fourth sister and seventh sister, even if they encounter renowned figures, they'll be fine. That's right, big sister. We, the thousand-faced 8 immortals, can transform infinitely. Fourth sister and seventh sister are adept at adapting, knowing when to advance or retreat when facing strong opponents. They won't get into trouble. Besides, with all 8 of our immortals gathered, who would dare to disrespect our thousand faces immortal sect? Outside Yusher Town, aside from the deserted house on the mountainside already occupied by Red Tower Mountain, the rest are forests, wilderness, and a large expanse of lake. The weather is getting colder, and by dusk, a layer of frosty mist had formed on the surface of the lake. But let's not even mention the frosty mist. Even if the sky were freezing and the lake surface iced over, it would not stop the fishing folks from fishing. Just like bloodthirsty spectators watching a play, even if they might get hurt or die, nothing could stop their eagerness to fish. There's a saying that goes, as long as fishing isn't in vain, even death is worth it. At this time, 2 women in red dresses were discussing this matter. The 2 women in red, one with her hair in a bun and the other with twin ponytails, donned the attire of bright young girls. But as your gaze lowers, you would discover their figures full of charm, giving off the impression of both young wives and mature women. The melding of these 2 impressions doesn't feel abrupt. It even adds a sense of enchanting allure that accelerates one's heartbeat. Fourth sister, I've heard that some of the fishing folks actually belong to a very secretive organization. They appear to be ordinary fishers on the surface, but in reality, many of them are either experts or famous figures. When they fish together, things tend to happen afterward. At this point, the bun-haired woman spoke. You're right. Some fishers are not simply fishing. They belong to a mysterious group called Golden Hook. This organization's people like to use gold hooks when they fish. It's said that fish in the water are greedy for gold and easily bite on golden hooks. And people are greedier than fish. They're even more easily caught by golden hooks. The twin ponytailed woman explained. Golden Hook ensnares people. Doesn't that make the Golden Hook organization an assassin organization? Just like Netherworld Mountain Villa, said the bun-haired woman, surprised. No, when Netherworld Mountain Villa kills, the victim's head quickly separates from the body, but Golden Hook specializes in hooking people to let blood, willing to drain a person's blood dry before stopping. Doesn't that make the Golden Hook organization even more terrifying than Netherworld Mountain Villa? Not necessarily. Netherworld Mountain Villa has 18 levels, and each level's assassins have different methods. Moreover, the master of the 18th level of Netherworld Mountain Villa is said to truly possess soul-hooking capabilities, and within the villa's 18 levels lies endless Netherworld. Amidst the foggy mist, the 2 women eerily discussed these secrets of the martial world, making the entire lake exude a sinister vibe as if the Netherworld could emerge at any moment to claim lives, just like the Golden Hook snags its targets. Fourth sister, have you ever seen the master of Netherworld Mountain Villa? Seventh sister, look at those 2 fishers over there. Are they using golden hooks? In the distance, 3 fishers sat on the lakeshore fishing. When someone lifted a fishing rod, the hook indeed cast a mysterious golden glow. At this time, the 3 fishers turned their heads, all with a very consistent expression. Since you 2 ladies know about the matter of the golden hook, why do you still dare to trespass here? Said the fisher in the middle, smiling beamingly. Amid the heavy lakeside fog, his smiling face appeared remarkably insincere, almost as if wearing a mask. At this moment, the twin ponytailed woman in red, as if she had not seen them, began answering her own 7th sister's question. I haven't seen the master of Netherworld Mountain Villa, because I grew tired of that face by the 14th level. I don't know much about the Golden Hook organization either, but we could take their faces later and play as fishers for fun. Hearing this, the complexions of the 3 fishers abruptly changed. It's the mad woman from Thousand Faces sect. The bun-haired woman slightly furrowed her brows and said, Sister, we are clearly thousand-faced fairies. Why are they slandering us as mad women? Because they are jealous we have so many faces. Haha. Then we shall have as many faces as possible. The conversation between the two women echoed by the lakeside, sounding exceptionally chilling. Attack! The three fishers did not hesitate and suddenly made their move. In the air, a golden light flickered as three golden hooks flew towards them. Their trajectory was erratic, seeming as if they could hook nothing, yet also as if they could hook everything. The next moment, the hooks moved faster and became even more elusive. Three thudding sounds. That was the noise of hooks latching onto flesh. Hooked! The three fishers were overjoyed and quickly reeled in their lines. As they did, the golden hooks sinisterly burrowed into the bodies. The two women suddenly floated up, as light as paper, due to the bizarre and weird movement technique, so that the moment the fishing lines slackened, the hooks couldn't go any deeper. The three fishers were about to flick their fishing rods, hoping to entangle the two women with the fishing line, but they were too slow. The two women gracefully wove through the arcs made by the fishing lines and moved to the front of the fishers. The next moment, a series of agonized screams rang out. It was because the three hooks that had caught the women suddenly flashed, each hooking into the eyes of the three fishers. With a jerk of the fishing lines, the eyeballs, like caught fish, flew into the air. Chapter 188. Afterward, the three fishing men's bodies shuddered and fell over. The two women in red revealed joyful smiles on their faces. The woman with a bun chuckled, "Fourth sister, I want the face in the middle." In her hand, somehow a very slender knife had appeared. The blade was extremely narrow, thin as a cicada's wing. The edge of the blade pierced the man's face, moving along. Quickly, a grotesque and terrifying scene unfolded before their eyes. The man's facial skin was thus flayed off, intact and complete. The two women must have been quite fond of skinning faces, their beautiful eyes brimming with delight. At that moment, an ethereal voice rose. What kind of evil demon acts in broad daylight, flaying people's faces? Startled, the two women spun around and saw a man in green standing amidst the mist, his figure tall and straight. Even as the fog swirled, the half-carved wooden mask on his face couldn't hide his handsome features. The bun-haired woman, holding the human face, giggled, "Sister, this man has quite a handsome face. I'll go and cut it down to see." As she said this, she stepped on a fishing rod planted in the ground, propelling toward the man like an arrow released from a bow. Her movements were both fast and sharp, evading with clever direction changes mid-flight. Her knife-wielding hand was very steady, confident she could slice off this face with a single motion. "Be careful!" the woman with twin ponytails shouted. In the next moment, the bun-haired woman's motion abruptly slowed when, just as she was about to collide with the man, a dense mist suddenly surrounded him. It was actually threads of sword chi like smoke. With a clang, the extremely narrow knife sliced upward, colliding with the sword chi threads. Although these threads seemed fragile and were easily cut, they suddenly manifested an ominous black color. Clang. A pause gripped both her knife and her momentum. Ah! The woman flew past, then flew back again. She now had a blood hole in her shoulder, and if it weren't for the fishing line fourth sister pulled back in time, her fate would have been even worse. For a moment, this young and handsome man, who seemed like a gentle doctor, appeared quite terrifying amid the fog. The two women exchanged knowing glances. Seeing this, Duan Yun prepared his sword finger, ready to counter any move. It had to be said, these two women were quite skilled, especially the twin ponytails, hidden and yet unrevealed, as if holding many cards up her sleeve. At that moment, the two women arched their bodies and lifted the hems of their skirts, speaking in a charming voice. "We were blind and have offended the elder. We hope the elder will spare us for the sake of Thousand Faces divine sect. Elder, if you have any punishment, we sisters are willing to accept it." As they spoke, they lifted their skirts even higher, revealing underpants with exquisitely detailed patterns. He had never heard of this Thousand Faces divine sect, but their way of apologizing did seem quite sincere. Accept any punishment? Duan Yun asked. Of course, our big sister always taught us to know current affairs, or we'll suffer. Please, elder, for our big sister Thousand Faces Goddess's sake, punish us properly. Good, good, good. Mr. Duan, Dr. Su Xian, love those who understand the times and are brave heroes. So first, fall down. With a boom, Duan Yun's fist technique suddenly erupted, and he punched out. Bang bang. The two women hit by the punch fell to the ground the moment they spat out blood, their faces bearing a sorrowful expression. The twin ponytails woman seemed to have much deeper skills, speaking sorrowfully. Why such a heavy hand? Indeed, she felt her whole being might be flattened by this punch. But what truly tortured her soul was that sorrowful fist intent. Seventh sister was trembling, rolling her eyes as if broken. As a doctor, how can I demonstrate my medical skills if you're not seriously injured? Duan Yun said seriously. How dare you disrespect my Thousand Faces divine sect? My big sister, the Thousand Faces goddess, is nearby. Tap tap. The woman's pressure points were sealed by Duan Yun. Thousand Faces this and that, divine goddess or whatever, never heard of it. All just evil demons who skin faces and will be exterminated together. Do you think that apologizing can save your life? I, the doctor, first inflict serious injuries on you, then after treating you repeatedly, it'll be time for young hero Duan Lang to perform demon extermination. Saying this, with a face full of heroic spirit, the Dr. Su Xian, with the medical practitioner's compassionate heart, appeared imposing. Looking at that heroic and handsome face, the twin ponytails woman couldn't help but think of someone. Could it be? Chapter 189. The cellar is like a prison. The fairy has really fallen into hell. Duan Yun had gone out for a while and came back, bringing two pretty women with him. Murong had not returned yet, and their whereabouts were unknown. There was a wooden table in the cellar, and an oil lamp on the table had been lit. Upon putting these two women into the cellar of the medical clinic, Duan Yun couldn't help but reveal a relieved smile. To the two women from the Thousand Faces immortal sect, this compassionate smile of the medical practitioner was filled with terror. Especially the moment Duan Yun removed his half-mask, the double ponytail woman's fear peaked instantaneously. Old demon Duan. Under this shock, True Qi forcefully broke through the half-baked dumb acupoint technique used by Duan Yun, allowing her to make a sound. Hearing these three words, the smile on Duan Yun's face that was full of relief disappeared instantly, turning into a grim expression. The rapid change was as terrifying as their Thousand Faces immortal sect's ability to change their faces. Shut your mouth if you can't talk. Saying that, Duan Yun flicked his hand, emitting a jumping electric arc directly penetrating the mouth of the double ponytail woman. The double ponytail woman's tongue and body shuddered violently, her eyes rolled white, and she barely moved. Her tongue and brain were completely numbed by the electricity. Seeing her older sister being electrocuted, the bun-haired younger sister almost peed herself out of fright. Her experience in martial world was much lesser than her fourth sister, but she had guessed who this man was. She had gone to a tea house to listen to stories a few days ago and had heard of the old demon Duan. But she wasn't very afraid of this so-called old demon Duan. Martial world had many demons and old demons, but there was only 1,000 Faces immortal sect. Even famous demons had to submit humbly before their elder sister. Not to mention that this time, the 8 immortals were all present. This was also why Yusher Town was so chaotic, and their elder sister, the Thousand Faces goddess, dared to let them run out to slash people's faces. Firstly, her and fourth sister's methods were robust, and even in Yusher Town where various forces converged, if it wasn't a top-notch figure, they wouldn't be able to handle them. Secondly, they knew when to concede defeat. When encountering an opponent they couldn't handle, they would immediately submit, like revealing their undergarments. They even felt letting the other party take some advantage didn't matter, coupled with the fame of the Thousand Faces immortal sect, naturally without much worry. However, at this moment, seeing her sister nearly stupefied by the electric shock, Xiao Qishuang realized her mistake. This person not only was beyond their control but also did not give any face to the Thousand Faces immortal sect. She couldn't help but recall the storyteller's words. Old Demon Duan is terrifying because he dares to mess with anyone, whether it's some important young lady or a famous female hero, or even dread-inspiring evil cultivators, all treated the same. Those who fall into his hands, men are degraded and humiliated before being killed, women piss themselves, better off dead. Thinking of these words, Xiao Qishuang, who had initially scoffed at these claims, almost peed on the spot herself without Duan Yun even doing anything yet. This man truly was, as the storyteller described, a thug among thugs, a demon among old demons. She had practiced so long in the sect, having only slashed over 50 faces to meet such a misfortune. Truly a misstep encountering old demon Duan. No, she was still young. She had only slashed a few faces, only playfully killed over a dozen families and a small gang for practice. She wasn't done playing yet. She absolutely couldn't let anything happen to her. At this moment, old demon Duan suddenly turned his gaze towards her. With just one look, Xiao Qishuang felt a shiver from the soles of her feet to her brain, goosebumps spreading all over. Indeed, the face before her was handsome and captivating. If it were any other time, she might not have been able to resist playing around and neatly cutting it off to collect. But at this moment, with a snap, the dumb acupoint that was sealed had been released. Xiao Qishuang instinctively wanted to lift her skirt and reveal her undergarments to beg for mercy, only to discover she no longer had her undergarments. When did that happen? Mr. Duan, young hero Duan, please, I am still young, only 18 years old, young, please let me go. Xiao Qishuang pleaded tearfully. Her face naturally looked youthful, and with her tears, she indeed appeared pitiful. At this time, Duan Yun showed a seemingly compassionate expression, waved his hand and said, "Go away. I don't like dealing with women of this age." Thank you. Xiao Qishuang did not expect this turn of events. She hurriedly, joyfully stepped forward, walking out. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The exit of the cellar was right there. Once out, finding her elder sister, everything would be fine. Suddenly, a terrifying fist power struck. Xiao Qishuang didn't even have time to turn her head, as she was blasted flying out by a punch. This punch wasn't deadly, as she could still struggle to stand up. But the next moment, her hair was suddenly grabbed, and then that demonic voice rang by her ear. Is 18 years old young? At 18, is killing and face slashing not accountable? And what does that Mr. Duan mean? I said I am Dr. Su Xian. Dr. Su Xian, I hate those whose words don't match their hearts the most. With a boom, another punch smashed down. Xiao Qishuang's head heavily hit the ground, blood spewing out of her mouth. At that moment, Shen Ying and Feng Linger saw her being dragged back into the cellar by Duan Yun, her face bearing a despairingly soulless expression as if wishing to commit suicide. On the ground, a shocking trail of blood extended into the cellar. With a tearing sound, Shen Ying pulled at the face of the double ponytail woman, and a layer of skin was ripped off, revealing a new face underneath. Chapter 190. Just now that face was still a beauty. This face looked somewhat like a man posing. Beside her, there were already 6 peeled-off human faces. Following this, Shen Ying deftly gripped the woman's jaw, forehead, and other areas to rip off. The 2 women successively tore off more than 20 faces. It was almost like magic tricks, utterly outrageous. Feng Linger, seeing this, pondered, able to wear more than 10 human skin masks without noticeable oddities. These must be people from the Thousand Faces immortal sect, right? Duan Yun nodded and said, yes, when I caught them red-handed, they mentioned something about the Thousand Faces sect. Shen Ying moved her fingers and said, being able to wear so many human skin masks without noticeable flaws, there's a high probability she's one of the thousand-faced 8 immortals. Seeing the serious expressions of the 2 women, Duan Yun asked, what's the background of this Thousand Faces immortal sect? Feng Linger said, they are probably the people in this world who most love cutting off faces and are the best at disguise. It's said that the most exquisite human skin masks in the world 8 out of 10 are made by them. Because they are skilled at cutting off people's faces and using them directly. Duan Yun, with a heroic spirit, said, "Such evil and heretic ways." Feng Linger continued, "It's said that the 1,000-faced 8 immortals consist of either 8 women, or 6 women and 2 men, because each one of them is extremely good at disguising themselves, and few have seen their true faces. They love to cut off someone's face on the spot and then transform into that person." One of the Su family's eldest sons in Jinan Prefecture, who had been affectionate with his newlywed wife for over a year, ended up having his liver cut out by her, and the family heirloom green moon saber was taken. You must know the newlywed wife was supposed to be the young lady from the Zhao family in Jinan Prefecture, one of the great families. The two families almost turned hostile and nearly caused a massacre. Fortunately, a female divine catcher from Qingqi Bureau noticed a flaw, found a small box of unique glue used for attaching the human skin masks, and after mobilizing a large number of people, found the Zhao family young lady's body on a hill by the Great Ming Lake. That revealed the truth. It turned out that the Zhao family's young lady had been murdered long ago, her face cut off, and her identity had been taken over by someone from the 1,000 Faces immortal sect. For a whole year, no flaws were exposed. Qingqi Bureau speculated that only one of the 8 immortals from the 1,000 Faces immortal sect could have achieved this. But which one specifically, it was completely impossible to determine. The year after the case was solved, the female divine catcher who cracked the case suddenly killed her own family one day, failed in her crime spree at its peak, and fled, disappearing without a trace since then. You can guess the reason, right? Feng Linger said to Duan Yun. Duan Yun pondered. I suppose that female divine catcher had already died. The person who killed her family and went on a killing spree was actually someone from the 1,000 Faces immortal sect in disguise. Once the murderer's identity was exposed, naturally, they wouldn't use that face anymore, hence their whereabouts became unknown. Feng Linger nodded. You're right. That murderer being able to disguise as a prestigious divine catcher in Qingqi Bureau without being detected shows how terrifying their skill in disguise is. Just think, if one of the 4 of us were replaced by someone from the 1,000 Faces immortal sect, how terrifying would that be? Duan Yun replied, too terrifying. The moment these 2 women act out of the ordinary and lift their skirts to reveal their underpants, it's clear they are frivolous women. If someone who pretends to be you two takes the opportunity to plot against me, I wouldn't stand a chance, making it extremely dangerous. Hearing this, Xining and Feng Linger both showed puzzled expressions. Xining was the first to react, unable to help but retort, Are you always imagining it's us seducing you? Men really are jerks, thinking so lowly and indecently of us women. Duan Yun sighed deeply, saying, I was just outlining one type of danger. Shan Ing countered, Have you not considered how she knew about this danger? Even thinking about it is perverted. Even thinking about it is perverted. Duan Yun and Xining said in unison. Yes, if this goes on, Duan Yun would even get ahead in answering. He was wrong, truly wrong. He shouldn't have used such an example in front of Shadow Ing. Seeing the 2 of them unexpectedly speaking in unison, Feng Linger felt somewhat jealous, saying hesitantly, Duan Yun, listen, I and Ing are different. Perhaps I really will seduce you. When that happens, don't mistake me for someone from the 1,000 Faces immortal sect. Hearing this, Xining was shocked. She suddenly reached out, grabbed Feng Linger by the neck seriously and said, Duan Yun, I seriously suspect she's someone from the 1,000 Faces immortal sect in disguise. The real Feng Linger would never act so coquettishly. That made Duan Yun somewhat convinced, especially since Feng Linger had joined them later. Moreover, sharing knowledge was typically done by Xining and Murong, and Feng Linger, either due to her experience in martial world not being deep like his or some other reason, rarely did so. Yet today, she's unusually eager in sharing a lot of information about the 1,000 Faces immortal sect. Seeing Duan Yun's suspicious look, Feng Linger quickly struggled, saying, Duan Yun, don't listen to her. She's just settling personal scores. Xining asked, then explain. Why are you acting so coquettishly today? I'm joking with Duan Yun. What's so coquettish about that? Besides, what does it have to do with you if I'm coquettish? He's not your man, who knows, maybe he's even your half-brother by the same father. So, you're even thinking about your brother.
Feng Ling retorted.
Stop talking nonsense. Shining blushed. Why am I talking nonsense? The first person you found with 12 layers of spring rain was you, said Feng Linger unyieldingly. Chapter 191. At that moment, Feng Linger suddenly said, "She's awake!" Duan Yun and the other two turned their heads and looked at the twin ponytailed girl who had just been stunned by electricity. The twin ponytails had her eyes closed, her heart desperately wanting to say, "I'm not awake. I didn't hear anything." But out of fear, tears uncontrollably streamed down her face, and her body trembled. Her face no longer bore any other masks, a feeling she found even more unbearable than being unclothed. People from the Thousand Faces Immortal sect always liked living behind someone else's face, as it gave them a greater sense of security. But now all sense of security was gone. It felt to her as if she was bare, facing these three people, the most terrifying being old demon Duan, who treated everyone equally. Having just heard the conversation between two women and a man, she felt even more that these three were insane. A simple issue of whether the Thousand Faces Immortal sect was frightening or not turned into bizarre topics about being flirty and liking one's own brother. Liking one's own brother was clearly a secret among the three of them. If she hadn't heard this secret, she might have had a slim chance of survival, but she had to overhear it and got caught. "What are you guys doing here?" Suddenly, a man's voice sounded, and a figure walked in. In the next moment, the twin ponytails' breath halted. She saw a man holding a knife, his whole body wrapped in green. Yes, this man looked ordinary, but his face and hair were green, as if poisoned. No, what poison could make something shine so brightly green? This really demonstrated that no one around old demon Duan was normal. Everyone said outside, once involved with the territory of the Thousand Faces Immortal sect, the fairy realm could turn into hell, but at this moment, twin ponytails felt this place was the real hell. Not just the fairies of the Thousand Faces Immortal sect, but even Duan Yun's three righteous companions got startled. Duan Yun couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong with you?" Morong responded with ease, "Nothing much, much better than before. After slashing those detestable men-loving guys a few times, I've learned to channel the sword intent gradually into my hair. Once it moved into my hair, I suffered less." Saying this, his hair turned even greener. "Are you guys interrogating her?" Morong asked. "Sort of. Let me do it. Let her feel the pain of my green jade blade," Morong said excitedly. "Okay, you do it," Duan Yun said, seeing Morong so green and somewhat looking forward to his sword intent. "Go!" Endless sorrow, jade blade. A brightly shining green sword chi was slashed out, and the twin ponytails couldn't help but scream. This blade only cut through the flesh and fat of her thigh, not even reaching the bone, but she felt extraordinarily painful. I want to get married." At that moment, twin ponytails suddenly shouted. Duan Yun asked, "Why do you want to get married?" "I want to get married so I can let the man I love steal other women. That's the only way I can live. Otherwise, I'm going to die in pain." Twin Ponytail's face suddenly turned green as she screamed. "Damn!" Hearing this, Duan Yun, Shining, and Feng Linger all felt a shiver down their spines. Duan Yun couldn't help but remark, "This is so bizarre. Are you the old demon? Or am I the old demon?" The three were left feeling strange, and Twin Ponytails naturally was even more painful and scared. This basement was truly terrifying. In front of her, the four people led by old demon Duan were even scarier than Judge Yama of Hell. She and Seventh Sister were fairies of the Thousand Faces Immortal sect. This time, it truly was fairies falling into hell. "Big Sister, save us." Chapter 192. The four heroes of Yuju make a shocking appearance to slay demons and monsters. In the dead of night, Huangshan sword sects Laojiu and Laoba stood opposite each other. As the most outstanding young disciples beyond the Huangshan Six Swords, both young men impressed with their proud and lofty demeanor, epitomizing the dashing figure of a swordsman. Yet at this moment, these two scions of the Huangshan sword sect Laoba and Laojiu, were both shedding tears, their faces twisted in unbearable agony. Especially Laoba, whose complexion faintly showed hints of greenness. Laojiu, looking at the sword wound on his thigh, had pain in his eyes and spoke in a tone laced with rebuke. If you hadn't secretly longed for other men behind my back, you wouldn't have landed in such a disaster. Laoba quickly responded, My good junior brother, it's all my fault, being bewitched and thus afflicted by this wound. You must save me. Laojiu, with tears brimming in his eyes, said, Senior brother, is the sword intent truly so evil that only by doing that thing can you be relieved? Laoba said in a pained tone. The sect leader's wife said that truth lies within swords and sabers, as do the 7 emotions and 6 desires. I used to be ignorant, but now that I've encountered such a sinister sword intent for the first time, I'm truly tortured to death. I, Huangshan Laoba, am a renowned Huangshan swordsman. This mustn't be known by anyone, including the sect leader's wife and our senior sister. My good junior brother, without your help, I can only take my own life. As he spoke, his complexion faintly turned greener, much like the deepening of poison. At this time Laojiu, sporting a thin mustache, sighed and said, Senior brother, no matter what, I have to save you. But you must understand that whatever I do it all for you. You must never disdain me in the future. Laoba, with tears streaming down, said, My good junior brother, then I'll go. Saying this, Laojiu, with an effeminate gesture, crossed to the opposite side of the street and knocked on a door. A man with a large beard opened the door, and upon seeing little Huzi Laojiu, his eyes brightened. You really came. He then pulled Laojiu into the room. Let me see, in the daylight, you and your senior brother appear quite reserved. Laoba lurked in the shadows, listening to the conversation inside, and for a moment was overwhelmed with tears. However, he also felt the tormenting sword intent that plagued him beginning to lessen. Junior brother, it's all my fault. Laoba did not notice that on the other side of the street, Su Lingyi, their senior sister, revealed a shocked expression. The usually graceful 8th junior brother and 9th brother, it turned out, were secretly involved, and now the 8th junior brother even coerced the 9th brother to sleep with another man. Su Lingyi, who had been following the sect leader's wife and could be considered a big sister within the Huangshan sword sect, had seen many situations. But this scene was truly beyond her expectations. She knew that young people played around, but wasn't this playing a bit too much? If this got out, it would be a huge disgrace to the reputation of the Huangshan sword sect. So the next moment, she appeared before Laoba. Laoba, already distraught by the noise inside, was shocked to see his senior sister suddenly before him, as if he'd lost half his soul. Say, senior sister. Su Lingyi looked at him coldly and said, You have something to say. Explain it to the sect leader's wife. Sister, please no. Laoba gripped the sword hilt tightly, begging for mercy. Without turning her head, Su Lingyi said, You know the consequences of offending your superiors. Whatever your difficulties, just speak out. The sect leader's wife is not an unreasonable person. In both Yun and Yu states, and especially Yu state, there are plenty of people with homosexual tendencies, but what you did with 9th brother, you'd better explain it well. With that, she took a complicated look at the house from which sounds were emerging. The sword talent of the 8th junior brother and 9th brother was not the strongest among the young generation, but the Huangshan sword sect had still invested a lot of effort into them, all because of their exceptional appearance. The Huangshan sword sect also needed a facade, which was beneficial to the glory and expansion of the sect. Yet now these two, not only were they tangled in an affair, but also, inside the 2-story building, Laoba and Laojiu knelt before the sect leader's wife, Zhao Ling. Laoba had a sword wound on his thigh and Laojiu's pants were torn, in an even more disgraceful state. Zhao Ling was furious, interrogating, The sect hasn't treated you poorly. Is this how you repay the sect? Both Laoba and Laojiu begged for mercy at the same time. Sect leader's wife, spare our lives. Zhao Ling looked at Su Lingyi and asked, Is it taken care of? That man is a notorious bastard in Yu state, with extraordinary Qinggong, who harms both men and women. I took advantage of his exhaustion after his exertions on ninth brother and sealed his throat with a sword, Su Lingyi replied. The sect leader's wife Zhao Ling's expression softened slightly. Among all these disciples, indeed only this female disciple was the most sensible and in line with her wishes. Men are really unreliable. Not to mention this Laoba and Laojiu, the calamity caused by the first of the Huangshan Six Swords had caused her great shame. Before his disappearance, he even sought to learn the fallen arts of old demon Duan, claiming they could significantly boost his power to take revenge on Mr. Duan. As if the Huangshan sword sect lacked superior martial arts and was no match for Mr. Duan. You say this calamity was caused by this strange sword wound. Speak clearly. If there's half a lie, you will die on the spot, the sect leader's wife said coldly. Laoba dared not delay and quickly said, In the daytime, I saw a young man sashaying down the street and thought him to be indecent, so lust arose. Hearing this depiction, both Zhao Ling and Su Lingyi revealed expressions of pain and exasperation. With such exemplary disciples, why should the Huangshan sword sect not flourish? You say you were struck by that wound, and although not fatal, it has a dreadful sword intent eroding your divine sense, forcing you to have your beloved Xiaojiu serve others to relieve it? Zhao Ling said with a solemn expression. Chapter 193. Master's wife, it really is so. I dare not hide anything. Old Eighth said with tears streaming down his face. Zhao Ling's expression darkened as she pressed her right hand abruptly against Old Eighth's head and said, I want to see just how evil this sword intent is. In the blink of an eye, a yellow mountain with swords stuck into it, the Dharma image, manifested behind Zhao Ling. The sword intent became heavy like a mountain, entering Old Eighth's body. Moments later, Old Eighth issued a piercing, miserable scream. It was because the sword intent of Zhao Ling and the sword chi of Murong brothers clashed as soon as they met. And so, Old Eighth's body became the battlefield for the fight between sword chi and sword intent. With a snap, Old Eighth's abdomen burst open, releasing a bright yellow sword chi and a ghastly green sword chi. The sword chi collided with the sword chi, vanishing without a trace. Zhao Ling, looking at her slightly green-stained fingers, said, This sword intent is indeed strange. It's not all your fault. Yes, in that instant, even she had the urge to let her own husband go and steal someone, preferably a female disciple from the sword sect. But it was quickly suppressed by her Huangshan sword intent. Thank you, master's wife, Old Eighth said, covering his wound. A twisting but belonging to a young man? Zhao Ling asked. Yes, master's wife. Zhao Ling turned to Su Lingyi and asked, Ling Yi, what do you think? The young man who uses the saber, old demon Duan, is young and handsome, a dual master of sword and saber. And his saber technique is also such bizarre. Could it be old demon Duan?
Su Lingyi analyzed.
At the mention of old demon Duan, the already strange atmosphere in the room became even more eerie. These three words seemed to carry a strange magic, making people feel bizarre fear amidst the flickering candlelight. Zhao Ling's expression was grave, and at that moment, Su Lingyi continued asking, What does that man look like? Old Eighth quickly replied. Replying to senior sister, he looks very ordinary. Ordinary? Then it probably isn't old demon Duan. No, looking ordinary and yet you get seduced to the point of losing your soul. Su Lingyi, with her meticulous thinking, sensed something was wrong and questioned. Old Eighth replied, Senior sister, what I said is true. That man really does look ordinary, but his skin is quite fair, and he deliberately flaunts his coquettishness with his twisting butt, and I just fell for it. With a crisp slap sound, Su Lingyi raised her hand and delivered a hefty slap across his face. Being a bit whiter and twisting a little gets you hooked like this. Then what's the point of you practicing the sword? Zhao Ling, too, was filled with disappointment, waved her hand and said, You two roll back to the mountain and go under solitary confinement for 1 year. Thank you. Thank you, master's wife. Old Eighth and Laojiu hurriedly retreated. Su Lingyi looked at Zhao Ling and said, Master's wife, Could it be old Demon Duan? Zhao Ling shook her head. This kind of saber technique is unheard of. Even if it's not old Demon Duan, it's some new kind of crooked and evil method. The world is indeed filled with more and more evil demons. Our Huangshan sword sect must obtain the dragon essence so we can completely eradicate these evil heretics, to avenge the unjust soul of your eldest senior sister. Thinking of her daughter who peed on the golden sword, her eyes suddenly became more determined, resolute to fight to the end with evil demons led by old Demon Duan. The matter with old Eighth and Laojiu brought a shadow over the Huangshan sword sect. Likewise shadowed were the thousand-faced 8 immortals. Fourth sister and seventh sister had not returned all night, their whereabouts unknown, inevitably causing worry. This was because they were in Duan Yun's cellar. At that moment, the ponytailed girl and the bun-haired girl were no longer quite sane. Due to both being inflicted with the Murong brothers' green saber, they desired to get married, wanting a man to steal someone for them, and such sword intent tormented them to the brink of madness, not to mention the various wounds inflicted on their bodies. These wounds were deep and shallow, all healed by the handsome old demon Duan using marvelous arcs of electricity, forming an array of characters that read, Rectify. The Murong brothers felt that Duan Yun was becoming more and more skilled at marking on human flesh. Especially on these two women, where it went as smoothly as writing calligraphy, much more so than on old Gua's body. Marking on women's bodies was truly more satisfying than on men's, and as a gynecologist, being more skilled with one's hands when facing women made perfect sense. Although the physical wounds on the two women were healed, their mental suffering was still very severe. At this moment, the ponytailed girl, her face green, pleaded, "Please marry me right now. You go steal someone else, otherwise I'm going to die." As she spoke, her eyes suddenly glared, and she shouted, "I want to be a hero." Her entire demeanor seemed to have changed. After voicing this, she turned green again and begged Murong brothers for marriage. In the eyes of Feng Linger and Shining, this green visage desiring to be a hero was very strange. In Duan Yun's eyes, the woman's condition was slightly more complicated. This woman was first struck by his 16-road chi of supreme heroic spirit's extreme resentment punch, harboring both overwhelming grief and a soaring sense of justice from supreme heroic spirit. Later, she was also struck by a strike of the Murong brothers' green saber. Consequently, she was swamped with 3 kinds of emotions, wanting to cuckold herself at one moment, overwhelmed with sadness the next, and then desiring to be a hero. Like now, she was in the stage of wanting to cuckold herself. The ponytailed girl looked at Murong brothers, begging bitterly. With a few slashes made outside and here, plus moving the greenery to her hair, the Murong brothers felt much better. Listening to this woman's bizarre proposal, he felt a touch of arrogance and asked, "Why do you want to marry me and not someone else?" Among those present, besides him, there was only Duan Yun, another man. Chapter 194. This time, he seemed to be making a comeback right in front of old Demon Duan. Ponytail took a glance at Duan Yun, then turned towards Murong, saying, "He's too handsome. I'm not worthy of him. There's no hope with him. But you're way out of your league trying to reach me. Just agree already." Murong was taken aback, sucked in a breath of cold air, and furiously shouted, "Blind old woman, I agree to nothing." Feng Linger and Shining were momentarily at a loss for words, only thinking that young Murong was out of his mind. With his appearance, he really thought he could compete with Duan Yun, totally delusional. However, since he had swung those 2 slashes, the 2 women had some newfound respect for him. After all, if they drove him mad, him slashing with the green saber twice could force them to hand Duan Yun over to other women to detoxify. That was genuinely frightening. Yes, the 2 women, though confident, were not sure if they could withstand Murong's sword intent. After mastering the green saber, Murong had gained a brief respite at the bottom of Yuzhu Villa. At this point, Bun also woke up. Her true cultivation was worse than Ponytail, so she felt like she was dying alive. If it weren't for her acupoints being pressed, she might have gone insane from the pain or committed suicide. "Please, just kill me. I feel so terrible, really terrible." Why can't the man I love just go sell his ass? I want to be a hero. She uttered 3 sentences, each completely different in tone and emotion. Duan Yun, being the doctor with a compassionate heart, was always tender-hearted and couldn't bear to see people suffer, said, "Actually, I can cure this pain for you." The 2 women suddenly saw hope. Ponytail reacted swiftly, sincerely saying, "Dr. Su Xian, you have the heart of a bodhisattva. Only you can save both of us." Dr. Su Xian, pleased with this, said, "Then accept my boundless heroic spirit baptism." Speaking, he extended both hands like an immortal blessing them, pressing them on the heads of the 2 women. Beaming divine skill. Visibly, true qi moved from the heads of the women into Duan Yun's body. This true qi was complex in nature, some even showing hints of green. "Murong, that sword qi of yours packs a punch." With that, his qi force surged around him, creating ripple-like waves spreading outward. This was him integrating Murong's sword intent with his own melancholic fist intent. In the center of the ripples, the bodies of the 2 women were drawn into an arc, intertwined together, forming a circle head to tail. The next moment, Duan Yun and the 2 women shuddered together. Afterward, the 2 women looked unwavering. "Heroic venerate above. I want to be a hero. Heroic venerate above. I want to be a hero," both women said in unison. "Good. What is a hero?" Duan Yun asked. "To act for heaven, to Demon Slayer is to be a hero. To act for heaven, to Demon Slayer is to be a hero. Who do you want to slay? The 1,000 Faces immortal sect kills the innocent. Slay them. The 1,000 Faces immortal sect kills the innocent. Slay them." In the dark dungeon, these 2 were filled with Duan Yun's heroic spirit. Though their words were righteously overflowing, to Shen Ying and the others, there was a hint of evil. Indeed, they had already transformed into the form of old demon Duan. Then, Shen Ying asked, "They are better now, what should we do next?" "Be a hero. Slay. 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 Be a hero. Slay. Slay. Slay." The 2 women eagerly replied. At this moment, they were of one mind with Duan Yun. Their answers were also Duan Yun's responses. Murong, moved by their heroic spirit and with his swordsmanship inflated, said, "Let's go. Let's go dispel evil and uphold justice, and wipe out the 1,000-faced 8 immortals." This step was going to wipe out someone else's gate, the notorious 1,000 Faces immortal sect in the martial world, which caught Shen Ying off guard. "Well said, what's so difficult about the 1,000-faced 8 immortals? Now with 2 fairies turned from evil to righteousness, 6 against 6, we have the advantage. Today, I, young hero Duan together with female hero Linger, husband leading wife on, will slay demons and rid evils." Feng Linger, holding the red-faced sword, followed suit. Shen Ying gasped in shock. "Can you please not misuse the terms?" As a boxer, she was usually the most impulsive and loved taking all the heads. But at this moment, she felt she was the most calm. "Are you really going?" Shen Ying asked again. Duan Yun seriously said, "These mad women like to impersonate mature individuals committing crimes. You wouldn't want them to replace you one day, right?" "Well said. I, young hero Murong, must not let my lifetime reputation be destroyed by their replacement." Now he also called himself young hero, clearly showing the severity of his delusion. Watching everyone look at her, especially with Feng Linger subtly moving closer to Duan Yun, creating an atmosphere of united front and couples fighting side by side, Shen Ying clenched her fists. "Then what are we waiting for? The fists of your destined female hero have been hungry and thirsty. Let's go." Murong, with his green hair, charged out first. Chapter 195. Run fast. It's the 4 fiends of Yuju. At this hour, dawn had just broken not long ago. Yet the diligent townsfolk had already started their arduous day's labor. The breakfast stalls had been set up even before daylight, billowing with rolling smoke. The streets were gradually becoming populated with people. Yesterday, the individuals from the various martial world powers were quite cautious, and not many of them appeared on the streets. Otherwise, with the Murong brothers' enticing twists of their hips, more than a few lechers would have been lured. Just this morning alone, there were more people from the martial world on this street than there were yesterday. People always need to eat. The Azure Dragon is about to descend into the world. How else to work or fight for the dragon essence without a full belly? However, for this group of average martial world folks, their desire for the dragon essence wasn't particularly intense. They were satisfied by the idea of just getting a piece or two of the dragon meat to boost their stagnant realms. With just that boost, enemies they couldn't defeat before would die, and women they couldn't play with before would throw themselves into their arms. Such is the cruelty of the martial world. As for why not follow that Taoist lead and grab the dragon essence in one fell swoop, becoming invincible beneath the heavens, isn't it just like why one doesn't have a divine blade in the left hand, a divine sword in the right hand, and incidentally marry a dozen beauties while also being a martial arts alliance hierarch? Don't they wish for it? It's a matter of destiny. Following behind the two women of the Thousand Faces immortal sect who had just washed their hearts and changed their faces, Yuju and the group walked past, drawing the gaze of many martial world people. Those few stood out not just because of their uncommon demeanor, but also because of their mysterious masks, and amongst them was one with noticeably green hair. 3 martial world folks eating steamed buns dropped 2 of them onto the ground in fright upon seeing that green hair. The 3 tigers of Rainroot Mountain, seated here, used to be 4, but now there are only 3 because Laosi encountered a mysterious swordsman yesterday. According to Laosi's account, the swordsman was a man shaking his hips, followed by a bunch of lecherous men. Laosi had an eye for women and wasn't interested in such flirty men, but he was one who loved to watch the excitement. After finding the occurrence amusing, regardless of the time and place, he proceeded to go have a look. Unexpectedly, the swordsman turned hostile and took him for a pervert lusting after men, and ended up getting stabbed. The stab wasn't fatal, just a flesh wound, nothing serious once bandaged, but Laosi's face turned green as if poisoned. He kept saying he was tortured by the sordid intent of that stab to the point of wanting to die, claiming he had to sell his beloved wife and concubines to alleviate it, otherwise, he would be in such agony that he'd contemplate suicide. The 3 tigers of Rainroot Mountain, being old riverside gamblers, knew that some high-leveled practitioners of the Tongyu realm could infuse terrible sword chi that affected one's mind, but such sword intent requiring one to be cuckolded to relieve it was unheard of. Laosi really sold his wife and concubines overnight, scaring the remaining 3 tigers so much that they thought Yushir town was full of wild devils, and they might encounter sudden disaster at any time. Hence, they were extra cautious around that wicked swordsman. To summarize with their younger brother's words, it was a man with fair skin on his face, who might occasionally turn green, and even his hair was green when swinging his sword. Thus, when the Murong brothers passed by, it nearly scared the 3 men to jump. Actually, it wasn't just the 3 tigers of Rainroot Mountain who were scared, as there were more than a dozen victims from the day before. Now, Yushir town was filled with forces from all sides, even hiding many a bloodthirsty storyteller, and the incidents involving that wicked green saber had already spread somewhat. Some even secretly named the mysterious swordsman Green Blade Demon. Thus, when the Green Blade Demon suddenly appeared so unguardedly, it naturally frightened quite a few people. The swordsmanship of the Green Blade Demon was truly bizarre and frightening, also attracting some bloodthirsty spectators. These Green Blade Demon and his party seemed formidable, as if they were about to undertake some great task. The Azure Dragon hasn't shown up yet, and it's already time to start? Bloodshed to form a river? This is going to be thrilling to death. In a moment, the bloodthirsty spectators followed in droves. As long as they don't miss out on the excitement, even if they are affected by that sword technique and are forced to be cuckolded, it's worth it. Duan Yun and his party continued straight out of the town, heading toward the outskirts. The morning mountain forest echoed with a few bird calls, making it seem very secluded. If it weren't for these 2 women leading the way, Duan Yun wouldn't have even known about the existence of this cave. The interior of the cave was not damp, with rugged stones, and occasional daylight sprinkling down, so it wasn't completely dark. The ponytail and bun-haired girls walked at the forefront, their figures like ghosts and spirits in the cavern. but their occasional outburst, "I want to be a hero," somewhat diminished the ominous atmosphere. It seems a person filled with a heroic spirit is like the sun and moon, where even dark evil can be dispelled. Deeper inside the cave, the 5 immortals of the Thousand Faces immortal sect sat there like sculptures, blending into the surrounding stone walls. However, it was evident that the mood of these 4 statues wasn't too good, with at least 3 frowning. Laosi and Laochi went out to scrape their faces and hadn't returned all night, and with the impending emergence of the Azure Dragon, it was inevitable to suspect that something had happened. Thousand Faces goddess Lu Qingqing sat in the center, appearing the most composed. In reality, under many of her masks, she harbored a slightly irritable mood. Those 2 little bitches, thinking about picking up fishermen all day long, and now they've been picked up themselves. Useless trash. They can't even scrape their faces properly. It's a disgrace to your mother. By rights, those bloody fishermen should show some respect to me. If they don't, I, Lu Qingqing, the Thousand Faces goddess, will definitely kill you dead fishers. Scrape off your faces, wear your skin, then put on a tool, sleep with all your women and then kill them. Chapter 196. Lu Qingqing, as the leader of the thousand-faced 8 immortals, always appeared the most mysterious and inscrutable. Even her sisterhood knew nothing of her but her ruthless methods, utterly unaware of her agitated heart. At this moment, her stomach was slightly empty, prompting her to remark lightly, "Why hasn't Third Sister returned yet?" Her tone was devoid of any trivialities of life, yet oddly enough, she questioned about food. For Third Sister had gone out to buy breakfast. The second sister quickly replied, "Sister, I asked her to also inquire about Fourth Sister and Seventh Sister, which must have delayed her a bit." Hearing this, Lu Qingqing closed her eyes, seeming to meditate, yet inwardly roaring. Damn old hag, so old and still issuing orders, oblivious to who the goddess is. Can't even have a full meal, snooping around for your mother's sake. At this moment, Second Sister suddenly exclaimed, "What's that sound?" Lao Wu's complexion turned sallow as she said, "The wind." "No, it's voices." Lu Qingqing's ears twitched subtly, using her profound inner strength. She had already discerned the human voices amidst the cave's winds, even identifying whose they were. "It's Fourth Sister and Seventh Sister," said Thousand Faces goddess Lu Qingqing. While she spoke, she lightly fluttered her sleeve, changing her face thrice. The other 4 exclaimed in joy, "They have finally returned. Yes, we thought something had happened. I was saying, our Thousand Faces immortal sect is in the martial world. They're saying, I want to be a hero." Suddenly, Lu Qingqing uttered this sentence. Indeed, the voices she heard in the wind said exactly that. "I want to be a hero." These simple 5 words instantly rendered the atmosphere eerie. The delighted second sister couldn't help but blurt out, "What kind of nonsense is that?" In the martial world, "I want to be a hero" was definitely nonsense, given that nowadays, hero wasn't a word to be proud of, with no future in being one. Especially coming from the mouths of the thousand-faced 8 immortals, it was completely absurd. At dawn, the cave was dimly lit, with the 5 of them resembling statues. Should anyone rashly enter and suddenly see them move, they would surely be frightened out of their wits, believing they'd encountered ghosts. Yet it was the words, "I want to be a hero," that scared them instead. This phrase truly felt ominous in this setting. The group exchanged guarded glances. Footsteps were now approaching closer. The light and shadow at the entrance shifted, and before the 5, indeed, appeared Fourth Sister and Seventh Sister who hadn't returned all night. Lao Lu asked, "Why did it take you so long to come back?" Seventh Sister replied, "We were reflecting. Reflecting on why we are evil demons who slash people's faces instead of valiant heroes who stand up for justice," said Seventh Sister earnestly. "I want to be a hero. I want to be a hero," Laosi and Laochi declared in unison. If the previous scene was already sinister and weird, these 2 sisters speaking the same 5 words simultaneously took the creepiness to its peak. "Be careful." Second Sister suddenly moved, her figure becoming a blur. With a sweep of her long sleeve, a dreadful fist power surged like a tidal wave. Laosi and Laochi were sent flying, crashing heavily against the cave wall, while the poison needles they had just fired from their sleeves deviated, hitting the cave ceiling. "They've gone mad," Lao Lu exclaimed. Old Second, looking at the fallen pair with their determined hero gaze, suddenly recalled something and said, "No, the hero, it's old demon Duan's path." With a click, her words stopped abruptly as she thrust out two fingers like lightning. A sword, like a branch of flowers, pierced from the stone wall she stood against, going straight for her throat. At the critical moment, she pinched the sword's blade with her fingers, avoiding instant death. The next moment, the sword twisted, followed by a piercing scream. Old Second's two fingers were severed and fell to the ground. By then, Thousand Faces goddess Lu Qingqing had arrived. Flicking her sleeve, a chain of pitch-black poison needles whooshed through the wall towards the other side. Feng Linger drew her red-faced sword, her sword chi swirling around her, creating a near-sealed defense, deflecting the poison needles. On the other side, without any pause, Lu Qingqing's face flushed earthen as fierce power gathered in her fist and smashed towards the opposite side. Dam dam dam. Her fist was as fast as lightning, but her cursing mouth and the changing expressions on her face seemed even quicker than her fist. Thousand Faces goddess Lu Qingqing was someone who easily got angry. And when she got angry, the consequences were dire. Take my Thousand Faces yellow rock fist. Her fist hit the cave wall, and the solid stone instantly cracked open like tofu, her fist driving deep within, showing the ferocity of her punch. But as her fist penetrated the wall, she abruptly sensed something amiss. She felt the wall on the opposite side was being similarly breached. No, more aggressively than hers. Not just one fistful. With a boom like a morning bell or evening drum, the thick cave wall collapsed outright, revealing a scene where three fists collided. Duan Yun and Shen Ying's fists united, in perfect harmony, leaving Feng Linger pale and crashing onto Lu Qingqing's fist. If one considered their fist power alone, all three possessed immense force on par with one another. But now, oddly, someone had their double fists united, which naturally produced a different effect. Duan Yun and Shen Ying's fists were irresistible, and Lu Qingqing's fist power was instantly shattered. At the moment of bone shattering, her body flew backward like a torn sack. With a loud bang, a human-shaped hole appeared in the cave wall. Chapter 197. Duan Yun and Shen Ying's fists unite. As soon as their husband Sing's wife follows, move ended. His gentle knife was unsheathed, and Feng Linger's red-faced sword touched together, swirling upwards. At that moment, with swords and sabers united, husband and wife harmonizing, the intertwined sword lights and sword flowers entwined together, turning Xin Ying and Murong's faces green as they smash forward. Thousand Faces goddess Lu Qingqing, truly living up to the name of Thousand-Faced, which, after years of fame, possesses profound skills. Even after suffering a setback and her hand bones being shattered, and her whole body being corroded by the fist intent of 16 Road Chi Extreme Hate Fist, she still forcibly suppressed the fist intent and her injuries, gathering her strength, ready to crawl out of the pit for a counterattack. But just as she was about to emerge, the united sword and saber energy had fiercely come at her, filling her entire field of vision. Consequently, first hit by a couple's fist, and then struck by a couple's sword and saber energy. With a slicing sound, her whole body smashes back as blood splashes. Dog couple, may you not die a good death. Watching the world's #1 sister and Duan Yun's united sword and saber, perfectly in sync, truly a chillingly perfect match, Murong's green hair suddenly billows. Evil heretics, taste my Murong hero's frenzied saber. As he speaks, he leaps up, trying to face 4 opponents alone, flying towards the other 4,000-faced fairies. Honestly, seeing the eldest sister being hit consecutively by 2 unifying heavy strikes left them all stunned. They change forms at will and love playing mature roles to launch surprise attacks. Naturally experts in backstabbing, this kind of sneaking and frontal confrontation is not their forte. Additionally, Because the cave's terrain is relatively narrow, they couldn't open up distance in time to execute their tricks. Yet ultimately, they were the daunting thousand-faced fairies, not weak in skill. Seeing green-haired Morong jump up, the four of them connect mentally, and the knives in their hands whizzed through the air like thin cicada wings. For knives flew out consecutively, not chaotically but rotating, forming a continuous offensive. They aimed to force Morong to jump back. But at this moment, Morong, in agonizing green, didn't think of retreating, recklessly slicing out. This hate-lingering jade blade. A violent sword chi breaks out from the saber, also carrying a terrifying spinning force. This hate-lingering jade blade combines the spinning tricks of 12 layers of spring rain, its momentum majestic. Clang, 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 clang for sounds. The four thin knives were struck flying. The 4,000-faced fairies' eyes instantly overwhelmed by a terrible green. They quickly drew new knives to block, but suddenly, two of them were pushed by a shove, their bodies tilting. It was the recently knocked down fourth sister and seventh sister, leaping up, pushing them recklessly. A string of brilliant sparks lit up. Two fairies blocked the terrible green sword chi, but the two who were pushed failed to block and had their arms severed on the spot. In an instant, both faces turned green, feeling their hearts cut like knives with lingering hate. 16 road chi. 8 extremes break. Before the four could recover from the terrifying green sword chi, the ferocious couple's fists came again, their fist power intertwined, spiraling, and booming forward. Two fairies were immediately blasted into the cave wall, while the remaining two were blown away. Sisters, run! At this moment, Thousand Faces goddess Lu Qingqing once again strongly crawls out of the human-shaped hole. Thousand Faces skills. You can see her flicking her sleeves, thousands of human skin masks wildly dancing, forming a human face storm, occupying the cave. Hee ha ha ha. Each human skin mask's face is as if alive, laughing at you. Suddenly, one human skin mask's face fiercely lurches forward, the thousand-faced fairy's body also launching out. She seemed to have merged into one with the swirling, flying thousands of human skin masks. With a clang, sparks exploded. Shun Ying's body was wrapped in silk, blocking this treacherous strike. Playing tricks. Leave this place to me. Not a single one of them can escape. Breaking body sword energy. Come out now. Young hero Duan is right. Kill them. Morong chased after a thousand-faced fairy who was trying to escape with a green hue on his blade. Bloodthirsty spectators followed Duan Yun to the outside of the cave, craning their necks to peek inside. One of the women, holding 2 steamed buns wrapped in oil paper, had a frightened and bizarre expression. She was the third sister who came out to buy breakfast and incidentally gather information. Initially enjoying the spectacle, she naturally followed to watch, but as she watched, something seemed off. Isn't this the cave where our thousand-faced 8 immortals reside? Suddenly, the foremost bloodthirsty spectator shouted, "They're coming out!" Everyone was startled and quickly retreated. The first to run out was Lao Lu, who had the lightest injuries and had been shaken to the outermost part by the fist power. Hence she ran the fastest. But as her petite figure just exited the cave mouth, a swoosh of a vine pierced through her head. Following that 2, 3, for vines. By the time her head had 6 branches through it, the blossoms could no longer be distinguished between blood and real flowers, and she finally collapsed, unwilling to die. Her eyes were wide open in death. This scene was extremely horrifying and terrifying, scaring the bloodthirsty spectators into retreating while continuing to scream and watch. As this person collapsed, there was a thud, and a ball of flesh heavily smashed against the cave wall and rolled out. It was a woman, folded into a spherical shape by a punch in the back, thrown out. Her face was as pale as gold paper, her breath weak, and she gasped like a fish, clearly lifeless. Her manner of death was even more shocking than the one with flowers blooming from her head. And the third person who rushed out had a pale green face. She was missing a leg, and just as she struggled to hobble out, a terrifying sword chi swept over, splitting her body in 2. After this, Morong with green hair walked out from behind, appearing like a demonic god. The bloodthirsty spectators were pale with fright, watching while hiding, until Duan Yun came out holding a human head, with a stack of human skin masks at his side. He shouted, "The Yuju for heroes, acting for heaven, the mad women of the Thousand Faces sect inside the cave have been completely killed." The next moment, seeing everyone inside dead, the spectators, fearing for their own lives, dared not watch any longer and fled in panic. "Run! It's the Yuju for demons." "What? For demons?" "Yuju for demons. They kill without blinking an eye." "Yuju for demons. Which mountain are they from?" "Who knows?" Duan Yun and his 3 companions wore masks, watching everyone flee all at once, leaving only the smashed buns on crushed paper, all showing puzzled expressions. Is this the treatment heroes receive? Chapter 198. The Azure Dragon appears, shocking the world. Outside the cave, several corpses had already been thrown into the hole. Duan Yun's hands now held not only a stack of human skin masks but also a green saber. The blade was as clean as jade and shaped like a crescent moon, clearly a fine saber. Upon seeing this saber, Morong couldn't take his eyes off it. Could this be the green moon saber from the Su family? Morong couldn't help but ask. Duan Yun replied, "I don't know, that woman hid it deep. I searched for a while before finding it." He then noticed the eager look in Morong's eyes and said, "Brother, I think the color of the saber suits you well. I'll give it to you." Morong had previously gifted him a saber as well, and Duan Yun, not being a petty man, tossed the green moon saber into Morong's hands. Morong looked at the green moon saber, its green blade reflecting his face under the morning sun, both gleaming slightly green. If it gleamed green in the dead of night, it would surely resemble a scene from a horror movie. Morong was delighted to wear the saber. Finally unable to contain his happiness, he exclaimed, "I've finally found the feeling of being a hero." At that moment, Shin-ing threw the last corpse into the freshly dug pit, puzzled. Why is there one missing? The cave was somewhat cramped, and in the chaos of the fight, these 2 fervent aspirants to heroism from the Thousand Faces immortal sect had ruthlessly turned against their own kin, and were naturally slain by their sect members. All that can be said is that they died spectacularly, true to the reform instilled by Mr. Duan, young hero Duan washing their hearts clean. One of them even died with a chunk of flesh bitten off in her mouth, not knowing whose sister's flesh it was. The vigor in this familial eradication was indeed tremendous. Morong couldn't help but mutter, if his sisters were imbued with heroic spirit by Duan Yun one day, wouldn't they kill him without any mercy? No, even without being imbued, many are ready to commit parricide. Thinking this, the green moon saber seemed to sense Morong's bitter mood and started vibrating slightly. This time the 8 immortals have not fully gathered. One has slipped through the net. I think we'll have to spend a good deal of money to get her information, and after getting it, we'll rush to send her to reunite with her sisters at night," said the female hero Feng Linger, looking at the 7 corpses and sighing. "You're right. Let's use part of the silver we collected this time to buy the information on the one who escaped," Shun-ing agreed. 100 or so steps away, there were still 5 or 6 bloodthirsty spectators listening to the disturbances. Among them was the 3rd fairy, the escaped one. Hearing Shun Ying's words, she was so frightened that her legs clamped together, her heart nearly jumping to her throat. This damned bitch is hell-bent on extermination. She had made up her mind. She had to flee overnight, head straight to the sea, and hide in the distant Fusang country. Only in this way would there be a slim chance of survival. Who could have imagined, just going to buy breakfast, she would witness the destruction of the once invincible Thousand Faces immortal sect. Apart from their 8 immortals, the Thousand Faces immortal sect still had some forces, but with the fall of the 7, these forces had dispersed. What shocked the 3rd fairy the most was that she didn't even know who these green saber demons were, and yet their sect was annihilated. Did our Thousand Faces immortal sect have such an enemy? They had engaged in some impersonations and annihilations in the past, but in recent years they had reformed, focusing only on legitimate businesses like cutting faces and selling human skin masks. never expecting such an unwarranted calamity. The green saber demons were truly evil and horrifying. After such a large sect was annihilated, they still knew nothing about these 4 demons. The only clue was that there were 2 men and 2 women, one of them with green hair, likely the strange green blade demon mentioned by others this morning. Thinking of the sinister saber techniques of the green blade demon, the 3rd fairy grew even more frightened. She must flee to the sea immediately. The news of the annihilation of the 1,000-faced 8 immortals by the demons of Yuju had already spread, casting a psychological shadow over all forces, large and small, around Yushur town. These suddenly emerged demons could indeed scare someone to death. Later, some curious individuals dug up the corpses of the 1,000-faced fairies and found each had died horribly. Some had their heads full of holes, others had bones broken by fist power and bodies folded like a ball. Some had greenish bodies after death, quite ominous. 2 were discovered with many righteous characters written on their thighs. It's really tragic. A few 1,000-faced fairies engaged in decent human skin mask business. And yet they were brutally murdered like that. Yeah, where are we supposed to buy human skin masks now? I heard that the masks from the 1,000 Faces Immortal sect were truly fair to all ages. In Martial World, storytellers are never in shortage, as every person from Martial World could potentially become a storyteller. Such news weighed heavily on the spirits of all forces around Yushur town, especially with the imminent appearance of the Azure Dragon. For they knew all too well that even the larger sects and forces were not necessarily much stronger than the 1,000 Faces Immortal sect. Those sects that had previously showcased their Dharma images were now regretting being too high profile. For they weren't necessarily much stronger than the 1,000 Faces Immortal sect. The 1,000 Faces Immortal sect was indeed mysterious and formidable. Despite their low profile and hiding outside the town in a cave, to have their sect annihilated like this was terrifying. In fact, the downfall of the 1,000-faced 8 immortals lay in having an inside traitor who had aligned with outsiders, and in that relatively cramped space, it was just the perfect stage for Duan Yun and the 2 women to combine fists and sabers, and for Murong with his green saber to excel, leaving no room to escape. Chapter 199. The 1,000-faced fairy was at a mere 30% of her full strength, while the 4 Yuju heroes were rising with the wind. This rise and fall naturally resulted in the total annihilation of their faction. In summary, it was indeed the first time the 4 Yuju heroes made a name for themselves. Inside that 2-story building, the sect leader's wife of the Huangshan sword sect muttered to herself after hearing these rumors. Since the green blade demon who hurt little 8 is also in there, after obtaining the dragon essence as your teacher, I will settle scores with both this person and old demon Duan. At this moment, a disciple asked, "But sect leader's wife, what if we don't manage to get the dragon essence?" Sect leader's wife Zhao Ling tidied her clean plain clothes and said, "The debt must still be settled, or they'll think that there is no one left in our Huangshan sword sect. How should it be settled?" "Settle it slowly, of course. Why are you being so talkative today? Get out at once." Zhao Ling exclaimed angrily. Watching the disciple leave, her blood pressure still soared. Before, little 8 and little 9 were engaged in a homosexual relationship, and now there was someone who had touched upon a topic better left untouched. In recent years, what kind of disciples has my Huangshan sword sect taken in? Night fell at Yuju Villa, where the 4 Yuju heroes sat in the courtyard waiting. Compared to the pharmacy in Yushur town, this place was closer to the graveyard, making it an excellent waiting ground. On the 9th day of the 10th lunar month, there is wine in the sky, and at the graveyard one fishes for the Azure Dragon at night. Today was the 9th day of the 10th lunar month, and it was already evening. Now it's early winter. There is a moon in the sky, the moonlight combined with frost, carrying a chill. The usually gloomy graveyard, when viewed from the villa, had numerous silhouettes of varying sizes that looked just like ghosts. The graveyard had never been so lively, not even when young hero Duan fought against a horde of devils. After all, young hero Duan had just started his journey back then, having offended not enough people. But now, it was no match for the once-in-a-century appearance of the Azure Dragon in the martial world. Duan Yun couldn't help but say, "Logically speaking, this place is quite remote, so why would the Azure Dragon appear here?" The Morong brothers explained, As a newbie, you wouldn't understand. There's a saying that dragons in this world need an excellent feng shui to grow. This place, adjoining Wangchun City, was chosen by the Mo sect to build the city precisely because this area is a feng shui treasure land in Yun State. The reason so many people are buried in this graveyard is that the feng shui here is excellent. Think about it. When you were following that monkey in search of the secret book, didn't you find an ancient tomb? One could say that my Yuzhu villa is situated right on a feng shui treasure land. As he spoke, he couldn't help but take pride. This place was about to be haunted before, with spiders nearly as big as human heads, and yet he was boasting. However, hearing his explanation, Duan Yun found it somewhat reasonable. By this time, night had fallen for a while, yet there was no movement on the graveyard. Even from within the villa, Duan Yun and the others could still feel the pressure emanating from the graveyard. If the previous nighttime display of Dharma images by various sects was to show off their might, to intimidate those of insufficient weight to back off, then at this moment the real battle was about to begin. The atmosphere was very heavy because blood might start flowing like a river at any second. There were more than a dozen forces, big and small, here, not to mention those lurking in the shadows, making the situation complex, and no one dared to make the first move rashly. This feeling was like having a sharp axe hanging overhead, with nobody knowing when it would fall. Maybe after the Azure Dragon appears, or maybe even before that, someone already wants to eliminate the competition. As a doctor here, Duan Yun also felt the pressure. There would surely be many injuries later, and it was uncertain whether he could handle them all. Actually, what the four were more worried about was whether this strife would spread from the mountain top down to the mountain foot. At that time, both Yuzhu Villa and Yusher Town might be affected. They could only adapt to the circumstances. The Azure Dragon still hadn't appeared, and some impatient Jianghu people were beginning to feel restless. If the graveyard was an enormous powder keg, then there already were flames erratically flickering, ready to ignite the place. It's fake. All fake. The Azure Dragon's appearance, it's just another deceit. With a bang, the man didn't finish his words before his head was split open by a single move, and he was killed instantly. Spreading false rumors and disturbing people's hearts? Death. A monk with a red mole on his eyebrow said indifferently. The man had intended to take advantage of the chaos to fish in troubled waters, but unfortunately, he encountered the demon monk from Dusk Temple. The man's sudden death caused the faintly igniting flames to subside slightly. Drip, drip, drip. Is it raining? Wait, why does this rain smell like alcohol? Alcohol in the sky. Fishing for the Azure Dragon at night. The Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon is about to appear. In an instant, the entire graveyard seemed to be boiling over. Forces big and small were rapidly converging tighter, and some unaffiliated wandering individuals from the martial world had started to move, looking like headless flies. They wanted to see if they could achieve the same brilliance as the Wuming Taoist did last time. Even if they could only live for a few decades, the temptation of being able to seize whomever they wanted within those years was irresistible to many. Some sensible people, who initially only wanted to scavenge a bit of dragon meat, now harbored frenzied fantasies. If they could obtain the dragon essence and practice the dragon claw technique, they'd wreak havoc in the emperor's harem. What are you looking at? What's it to you? A burly man clad in mink countered. The next moment, the two sides were fighting. A murder! A murder! Old Demon Duan has arrived. Green Blade Demon is over there. Back off! Some people took advantage of the chaos to add fuel to the flames, and the scene became instantly chaotic. Old Demon Duan himself and Green Blade Demon listened to the rumors, spreading outside, and were fuming with rage. Damn it! Who is spreading rumors up there? The Murong brothers had already drawn the Green Moon Saber, wanting to charge into the fray. As the newly famed Green Saber hero, he was more impulsive than the weathered young hero Duan. Roar! Suddenly, the earth atop the graveyard surged and a dragon's roar was heard. Holy shit! There is really a dragon. Duan Yun looked towards the source of the sound. The appearance of this roar momentarily halted the ongoing battles among the people of the martial world, as they were terrified by the sound alone. There's an anecdote in the human world known as Lord Ye's love for dragons, which tells of a man named Lord Yi who was utterly obsessed with dragons. However, when a real dragon approached him, he was scared half to death. The situation was similar with this group from the martial world. They had long been anticipating the appearance of the azure dragon, eager to skin it and extract its tendons, to devour its essence with relish, to turn its tendons into whips and its bones into swords. But as soon as the dragon roared, they were petrified. Let alone the common folks of the martial world. Even a master like Duan Yun felt unsettled. It was an inherent natural oppression. In this ludicrous martial world, fairies wanted to return to the heavenly court, while the thunder god and mother reigned above, yet all witnessed were mere humans. Whether it's the lascivious fairy from the Red House or the crazy thunder listening who lost his mind to thunder, no matter how bizarre or peculiar, they were still within the realm of humanity. But what about dragons? They lean more towards the creatures of myths, colossal beings. Roar! Another dragon roar shook the graves and the dark bamboo on the graveyard hill. Suddenly, a pitch-black figure emerged from the graveyard and soared into the sky. A dragon! It's the azure dragon. In Duan Yun's eyes, a massive elongated creature was indeed rising from the graveyard, glinting in the moonlight. Due to the distance, he couldn't make out the specific details, but those shimmering green scales, the enormous body spanning over 30 yards, it truly resembled the dragons spoken of in legends. The azure dragon had truly appeared in the world. In the rain, the azure dragon swayed its colossal body and flew upwards, the air around it distorted and warped. Viewed from this vantage point, it seemed as if it had been caught by an invisible hook, being pulled into the sky. Could it be that there really exists celestials above capable of night fishing for the azure dragon? Suddenly, the azure dragon's form jerked and it fell from above. It looked as though it had slipped the hook. With a thunderous crash, dust billowed on the graveyard hill, and over a dozen individuals from the martial world didn't have time to evade before being crushed into pulp by the azure dragon. The azure dragon, stirring its massive body, stood upright and turned its gaze towards the crowd on the graveyard hill. In that instant, the crowd fell silent, but the next moment, the azure dragon had already roared angrily and charged at them. The azure dragon was coming. Chapter 200. A brutal martial world. Behold Dr. Su's world-healing finesse. Azure Dragon's sudden pounce sent both the graves and the crowd on the graveyard mountain into chaos. In the Murong brothers' recollection, since Duan Yun arrived, this always gloomy and profound graveyard mountain had exploded into pandemonium several times. The dragon claw, devoid of much flesh and resembling a huge withered branch, could easily pierce through the bodies of the Jianghu people. With a swish, the dragon claw flung, and 5 or 6 Jianghu people flew down from the mountain like leaky sacks, colliding with those behind them, emitting sounds of bones and flesh shattering. A female swordsman got splattered with blood from a nearby corpse on her face, and before she could react, she saw the azure dragon's body sway, already attacking with a foul wind. A crunch was heard, and the female swordsman was bitten into a bloody mess by the dragon's maw, leaving only her unsheathed sword fallen on the ground. In just one encounter, the nearby Jianghu people, who had previously coveted dragon essence, dragon meat, dragon tendon, and dragon bone, had their courage shattered. Facing this enormous creature, their ambitions were cruelly extinguished by reality. Those who could run were considered brave, while many were so terrified that their legs gave way, falling to the ground, unable to even attempt to escape. Such massive creatures like dragons seemed to naturally instill immense pressure and a sense of fear. Suddenly, the mountain trembled, and the azure dragon let out a deafening roar. A multi-armed black Buddha Dharma image suddenly appeared behind, crashing down fiercely upon the dragon's body. That was a very young monk in white clothing. At first glance, it might even be difficult to discern his gender. A bright cinnabar mole adorned his brow, like a crimson eye, giving his androgynous face an extra eerie appearance. Dharma image attained enlightenment, but the monk's appearance was demonic. It was Dusk Temple's demon monk. This white-clad demon monk also appeared delicate and tender, capable of ensnaring men who favored male beauty. But at this moment, his fists were heavy as if weighing thousands of pounds. With one punch, the seemingly unstoppable azure dragon had its scales shattered, and dragon blood splattered. Almost simultaneously, 7 or 8 demon monks wielding iron rods charged forward. They moved swiftly, stabbing their iron rods into the wound and churning. These seemingly ordinary iron rods were hollow. As they churned, true chi swirled within, extracting flesh and blood. The azure dragon, in pain, lashed out with its tail. The white-clad demon monk leaped away, but several stick-wielding demon monks clung on, like maggots of bones. Boom! The dragon's tail slammed down to the ground, and 3 demon monks were instantly smashed into muck. But the remaining monks continued to madly churn their rods, completely disregarding their own lives. Suddenly, a crimson pagoda mountain dharma image emerged, and a man in blue robes wielding a large mace descended from the sky. The mace, 7 feet long, was shaped much like a pagoda, exceedingly solid in appearance. With a bang, the mace came down, and the dragon's body trembled and sunk. Red Tower Mountain's deputy mountain master had also made his move. The mace struck a bloody gash on the dragon's body. Flesh turned inside out. Then the mace spun rapidly, causing the surrounding dragon scales to fall, some of which flew like darts towards the demon monks of the Dusk Temple. 2 demon monks were unable to dodge in time and had their heads penetrated by the flying dragon scales, dying instantly. The rest of the monks had no choice but to withdraw their rods to defend. In their struggle for the azure dragon, Red Tower Mountain's deputy mountain master also made a move against the monks of Dusk Temple. You murder the innocents. Benefactor, you should really learn some Buddhism from this poor monk. The leading demon monk's cinnabar mole on the brow glowed even brighter, and with a flash, he charged towards the deputy mountain master. To outsiders, the pitch-black Buddha Dharma image seemed to be flying upon the crimson pagoda. Yet before they could clash, 2 wailing afterimages had already attacked. The wounded azure dragon, enraged, lashed out with its claw like thunder, striking both experts. Caught off guard, they were barely able to defend, but it was still a bit too late. 2 booming sounds erupted like spring thunder striking the ground. Both men slammed onto the ground like cannonballs, trailing destruction as they skidded, colliding and shattering tombstones and grave markers along the way. Ah! After falling, both men spat out fresh blood, their dharma images dimming. Seeing this, the azure dragon rose high, poised to deliver a fatal strike to these 2 men. Dragons, too, remember slights well. The azure dragon is injured. Dragon essence. Dragon meat. At this moment, the sight of the azure dragon's spilling blood excited the crowd. Seeing that people from Dusk Temple and Pagoda Mountain were already fighting over it, they could no longer sit still and surged forward. Roar! Instantly, all sorts of weapons, from swords and spears to staves and clubs, attacked the dragon's body. The dragon writhed and its claws danced. With every movement and swipe, people died violent deaths. But the onslaught could not be stopped. This scene reminded Duan Yun of the previous brawl in Yellow Water City. As the Jianghu people recklessly sought the meat and dragon essence, even those in front who wanted to retreat found themselves powerless to do so. Those with better Qinggong skills could still try to dodge and weave, while those with only average abilities once pushed to the front were simply delivering themselves. Yet even more people were red-eyed with frenzy. Some, on impulse, dug out a chunk of dragon meat and swallowed it raw without hesitation, like zombies. Then, even more Dharma images appeared, as powerful figures from major forces made their moves. Previously buoyed by a string of victories, Duan Yun, this once-in-a-thousand cultivation genius, was actually becoming somewhat arrogant. He had even fantasized about mirroring his earlier fame-establishing feat, where on the Graveyard Mountain, he single-handedly killed a dragon and intimidated a multitude of rivals. But now, within the mountain villa, he realized this was impossible. There were no less than 10 experts on the mountain whose cultivation was not inferior to his own. Along with countless sect disciples and wandering Jianghu people, The situation was utterly chaotic.